Howdy, Smite fans, and welcome back to another week of Smite esports action here on this lovely Thursday. We're going to be kicking things off with the Smite Challenger Circuit. We got 4 sets to be going through today, same as we've been doing the last couple of weeks out here. We're going to be starting with EU and then moving over to North America as the day continues to progress. My name is Jim Tucker. With me, I got Gormizer here for our first set of the day. We're going to have a team up here with the Styx Ferrymen, a pretty strong team. Hasn't found a whole lot of success just yet. Up against Mambo, a team that has found quite a bit of success.
Yeah, it's a bunch of names that should be recognizable, I think, throughout Europe because of how they've performed not only this year in the SEC, but what we've seen out of these teams in the past from a lot of these players. So I actually expect a lot of this. I think Ferrymen notably have been going to like 3-game sets over the last couple of weeks, whereas Mambo kind of doing a weird dance right now. Week 1 wasn't
in the name.
The best. Yeah, I guess a good point, right? It wasn't the best for them overall, and last week they were able to find a 2-0, which is something that we come to expect more out of a squad like this. So I'm interested to see what they're going to bring today.
Yeah, this is going to be an action-packed day for all of these teams out here. I mean, we're going to have a battle between first seeds for our second set of the day. When we get to our third and fourth sets of the day over in North America, a couple of teams that are sitting right at the bottom, a couple of teams that are sitting right in the middle of the pack. So let's take a look at the full schedule so you can see what teams we're talking about and what teams we're going to be seeing throughout. To start this one out, we're going to be over on Europe. Our first 2 sets are going to be Mambo and Styx Ferrymen, and then the Gilded Gladiators and the Niflheim Wargs will be after that. And then tomorrow, before the SPL starts up, we'll have the Aru Scorpions up against the Highland Ravens.
Yeah, really excited for the Gladiators and the Wargs, just because, like you said, those 2 teams so far undefeated and not necessarily unscathed through their climb, I guess, to the top, if you want to call 2 weeks a climb, right, so far. So I'm just interested to see what those teams are going to be able to do against each other.
Yeah, and over here with the Styx Ferrymen, you should recognize a lot of these names here. Beazriel, Ice, Gunter, Okeanos, and Streak Up, rounding their roster there. And as you can see, I mean, this team been struggling to find some wins. They've been able to get game wins here and there, but they haven't been able to find their full set wins as of yet. It's the Ferrymen and the Scorpions down at the bottom, Niflheim Wargs and the Gladiators up at the top of the standings right now. But this Ferryman roster, I mean, with names like this, you would expect, man, this should be a team that's right there and contending with the pack. But this is something that, Charlie and I have been saying, even Mifflin has been saying along with me. The SEC is just so competitive right now that you see these teams go, wow, these guys are at the bottom. It's like, wow, what is waiting for them at, at the top end, or what's waiting above them out here? Like I said, Azrael, Ice, Gunner, Okeanos, and Streak Up to round out this Ferryman roster. And this is a team that came in here, the dual lane is really where I put a lot of my focus for this team out here. Okeanos and Streak Up have been big names in this SEC squad.
Yeah, this is a team, again, that it has, tons of names, tons of play potential behind them, and they just haven't been able to find the success that you would expect to see, right? 5 games total that they've played, 1-2-0 loss, and then 1-2-1 loss for them. So they've been able to showcase a lot of strength. I think in week 1, a lot of my problem was that they had, a lot of great gameplay for like 8 minutes, 10 minutes, and then they just didn't do anything. They would get a lead, and it would just kind of persist for a little while until it got to a late-game team fight, and then suddenly whoever they were up against would be able to control that. Last week, we got to see a little bit of a change in that pace. We finally got to see them not just get that lead early on, but finally do something with it on the map, be a little more proactive. I mean, hell, the highlights from the game you were just looking at, they just slaughtered the Gilded Gladiators, one of the top 2 teams right now. So it shows that this team has so much potential behind them. It's just making sure that it comes up every game to make sure that they can climb the standings. Otherwise, you're looking at another set that's going to end up being cool. You looked really good, but you maybe lost 2-0, you maybe lost 2-1. It doesn't necessarily matter if you looked good for 15 minutes of each of those games, if at the 25-minute mark, your Titan is still the one that's falling down.
And then they're going to be going up against Mambo on the other side. Again, very strong team, a lot of notable names. Deathwalker, if you didn't already know who that was. Yep. Johnny and Zeros, literally former SPL players last year. And then Trix, Tank, and Echrome. Echrome, I believe, the only one of these players out here individually who hasn't had a chance into the SPL. So you're looking at 4 former Pro League players and then just a star-studded Hunter on that lane here.
Yeah.
But they're only sitting 1-1 right now. They end up losing out on their first week of play against another really top team out here. And there's a lot of expectations for this team, especially with Zeros and Johnny coming back into the SEC after their not-so-great year in SPL previously. A lot of high hopes for this team this season.
Yeah, it was actually, really surprising to see them go down 0-2 in week number 1, just because, this is the team that a majority of them, you go back 2 years ago, thrashed the EU SEC like it was nothing. And then you go back to last year, and still a majority of this team that was together then, granted the core maybe changing a little bit between those two, still kind of ran the whole scene. So watching them come in week number 1, and it's a 2-0 loss was like, oh man, what's going on? Is something not clicking? And then last week they were like, no, it was, whatever happened, maybe they were a little rusty, whatever it was. Yeah, it changed right back into it. I think what we saw last week is a lot more what to expect. Good Thoth play, good Sobek play, something that is a very typical ban from Trickstank, things like that. And just kind of seeing how they work together. I know like Heimdall is a must ban against this team because Ekrom's just nuts at it. And when you have so many high priority targets, I didn't even mention a Johnny God there, and that's a problem because guess what? You got to deal with that too. So I think this team just has a lot of threats on it, and at any point, any given one of them can step up to be the guy to carry.
Yeah, that's a dangerous team here for Mambo and the Ferrymen. Let's go ahead and jump right into the picks and bans for game number 1 to see what kind of shakes up here. Now, if I'm not mistaken, these players are going to be on the bonus patch now, so we did see the slight nerf to Shiva, but that also means that Shiva should be available for these players to go through. Didn't see a whole lot of priority with him in the SPL. Not too many teams were really looking over towards that god. It was, I believe, the Leviathan's support. Wrong, you played that one, and then Layers and Kirmi had played, and only Kirmi had a ban from him beyond there. But in the SEC, you never know what's going to be popping out here, like a first pick Heimdall out of all things here. And this seems to be just an EU special. It seems that, well, with Medusa banned, I guess specifically here, next best hunter almost seems to default to this god for the EU scene.
And not only that, but I think it like this functions perfectly for the Ferrymen, because if you look at the Ferrymen specifically, you go over towards Streak Up. Streak Up's got a really, really solid Heimdall, and some. I think you can say that about a majority of Europe hunters, like European hunters, is like their Heimdall is something to be worried about. It's not something that you typically get to say. I think about pretty much any other region, even in like the SBL, you don't have like, oh, that guy's Heimdall. And so I think Streak Up as well as Ekrom's Heimdall in this matchup are really big. So not only do they get something that's important for them in terms of their draft, but they take another asset away from Hex Mambo, which I think is beneficial. The 2 losses Hex Mambo had, both of them were when Sobek was banned against them. So I think that's something that you gotta be able to look forward to, is trying to control that duo lane a little bit more for this team.
Yeah, so far as the band's concerned here, though, Hoyi, Chalk, and Terra on the side of the Mambos, and the Mambo is the Mambo. It is the Mambo, I believe. Because Mambo is just, I don't know. I'm trying to pluralize things I don't need to pluralize here. Styx Ferrymen, they'll grab Heimdall, Awelish, and Atlas. Atlas is a god that we have seen mixed priority on, and when it comes to the top end of play, there's only a few teams who are really looking at this god. On the lower end of play, it seems, like here down the SCC, SOC, we don't really see this Atlas nearly as much, Gore.
Yeah, and I think it's something that's probably going to change as time goes on. I think, like we typically see things like kind of trickle down from the Pro League sometimes, but this is one of those picks that I really think just you have to practice with a little bit more often to feel comfortable with it. So I think we're going to see some teams that are like, let's lock him in, let's play.
Slam it.
And some that are going to be a little more hesitant about bringing him in. When you look at this, I think he's going to have a lot of good synergy just in general with the team because of how well his kit works together and the amount of CC it can bring together. But you do have some things to worry about, right? Like Hoyi can kind of create some distance between you. Cthulhu doesn't really care about your CC for the most part. You can pull him in and he's still going to turn around and fight. So I think there's definitely going to be some things that he has to tackle, but he just brings a lot to the table.
Speaking of bringing a lot to the table here, Zeros has taken quite a few bans of their own here, between the Thoth and the Baba Yaga, and then a Chang'e ban. Talk about a respect ban over anything else there, Gore. I mean, Zeros was one of the only players when he was in the Pro League that was actually running that god in the mid lane, and now he's eating a ban here in week 3 of the SCC, Zeus alongside that. And then Agni Ardio pickup for the Ferrymen, last picks over Hex Mambo will be Cthulhu, and then Zhang Kui. So you spend all these mage bans, and, well, we still get a Zhang Kui out here for Zeros.
Yeah, and honestly, with the way that we've seen Zhang Kui played, it is very much like performance of the game, right? And most of the time, he's pretty successful. He's been doing a lot of damage lately. He's still relatively tanky as far as mages go. So he's got really good survivability. And that might just be the thing Hex Mambo have. Like, Hoyi can keep himself safe for the most part, good self-peel, and of course that jump to get away. But then you've got Chalk. Chalk.
You got some Chonk.
He's chonky, yeah. So he's going to be tanky. You've got Terra. You've got Cthulhu. You've got Zhang Kui. Every single one of those targets, it's going to take a while to burn through.
It is going to. Game number 1 between the Styx Ferrymen and Hex Mambo. We'll be kicking off right here, right now. And this Chalk we've been seeing a lot of as of recent, especially, between the EU teams. Even over in NA, he's really been making himself known, especially over into this jungle role.
Yeah, a lot of chungle lately.
A lot of jungle.
That's been going on.
Lot of
I'm
the
not,
jungle.
against it. I think it's just really fun to watch. And again, the only thing he's lacking compared to traditional assassins, he's not going to have the same scaling as them, right? His damage is going to be a little bit lesser, I think, early on, but your build is going to be able to augment that. But the biggest thing he's missing is that traditional gank and gap closer that others have. You have to drop 2 abilities in order to jump in on somebody, so that's going to be something that's maybe a little more committal for a Chalk. But then you have to look at what he does bring. Well, he's got a ton of self-sustain, a ton of damage, as just mentioned, if the right build goes through, and Johnny is going to be building that way. And then you look at the ult. Not only is it a nice, massive teamfight ultimate, it's a silence on top of that, just a good amount of CC that's going to be coming from the jungle as well. And so that makes it a lot easier. Kind of makes up for the fact that you don't have that traditional engage that some of the other assassins are going to have.
And more than anything, it feels like this shot, while it is just a solid Johnny pick in general, just a solid pick, it also feels like it's a bit of a target at Ice, because they were running this god last week a couple of times.
Yeah.
And in all honesty, Ice is one of my more improved players that I've seen from last year up until at least the start of this phase of the SCC. Thought maybe we'd see a little bit of action there, but Ice, whenever he's getting away from these more setup style gods and getting to more of just these raw burst gods, the Camazotz, the Shocks, that's when Ice has really been shining so far in the SCC.
And yeah, I was actually thinking of the Camazotz. Once you started talking about him, I looked over and I was like, oh yeah, he's playing a Wheelish. That's not necessarily outlandish, but it is something that is different for them. They might be able to get first blood here.
Johnny does have the rain to heal himself up. It's Azriel on the run. One more auto under the tower, and Johnny will be the one to find first blood. The Hex Mambo strike first.
And that's, again, it just showcases what this Chalk is going to be capable of doing early on. Doesn't have the leap to close the gap. Doesn't have a lot that you're going to be looking for. He doesn't care if you hit him a lot, though, because he's going to be able to heal that up, no problem. Johnny, I think, good presence, good axe play. Plus, his passive plays into the jungle, I think, really well. Not something that you get to talk too often about with the Chalk. And so I think this is going to be dangerous, especially now that he's got first blood. That's going to be a small lead, get him some gold, help get this Chalk more viable a lot quicker. And it slows down, I want to say, one of the stronger lanes here. Not only the Artio, but also slows down Ice a little bit. Ice has been the person on the Ferrymen getting them ahead early on, and notably, as we mentioned earlier, on that Camazotz. So switching it up to a Wheelish, maybe going to have a different power curve that he's going to be following. But you have to watch whether or not he's going to be able to find the same impact. With a lot of tanky targets on the other side, it's not going to be as easy.
Yeah, and dealing with Artio is just not fun, to be honest. You're over in that solo lane. You don't really get a lot of opportunities to kill an Artio, to deal with an Artio. This early game really feels like that best time for somebody like Johnny and Deathwalker to be able to find a kill, a pick onto this god. Because once Artio hits level 10, 11, gets a couple of items online, she just feels like it's not even worth your time trying to get a kill on her.
Honestly, it might even be before that, right? There's just a certain point where you're just like, man, is it worth the investment? She can turn into a bear and stun us and run, and if that's not good enough, she can then switch back and root us. It just becomes like a whole game of CC and trying to juke it out. And so, a certain amount of levels, like you said, with tankiness, it's going to be a lot more difficult. But even then, you can see it here, Deathwalker's winning the engagement as far as things go, and even going for the ult to get some more damage down, but Azrael should be able to disengage. Cthulhu has a lot of distance, but it's just that problem of you're not that tanky. You've just got so many abilities that can peel for you.
Yeah, you just have too much sustain, too much kind of slipperiness there. That third ability,
the whole kit and caboodle.
The charge. You got everything that you want in Artio over here. That's what's been making her such a popular god over in that solo lane. There was a time where she was even a support god for a little while. I think Neil and PBM and Aurora were kind of playing those gods over in the SPL, but we've definitely been seeing pretty much just exclusive solo play out of her as of recent. And this Stone of Binding pickup here by Azrael, such a crucial item. It's one that's pretty much synonymous with her. With how much CC you just talked about, it seems that this item goes hand in hand with it.
I actually love Stone of Binding for multiple reasons. There's a lot of prot shred in Smite that it's built into certain kits. Horus comes to my mind almost immediately because that's one of my favorite things. But Stone of Binding enables that for those that don't have it, right? I love picking this up on Athena. I think it feels really good on Artio. It's just one of those, if you know you're going to be hitting a lot of CC, which guess what, Artio's going to be doing, then there's no downside to it, right? You're going to be shredding prots. I guess the downside is that you're picking this up over other items. But when you look at the team they're going up against, Cthulhu, Chalk, the Zhonghui, the Terra, all of a sudden that prot shred has a lot of good weight behind it too. You're going to be CCing a lot of people, and it's going to help your team eat through those health bars that otherwise are going to be very slow to move.
Now, Gunter here in the mid lane's been able to pick up a very small lead over the opposition right now. About a half level he has over Zeros on the Zhonghui. First item back from Gunter, though, will be a Divine Ruin to answer up to some of the healing here. Johnny, a lot of self-sustain in the kid. We talked to death about how much this Rainstorm can heal Chalk, especially ones going into a more power build. The Zhonghui as well, but it's an engagement on a Deathwalker. Good fling. The cripple field comes out from Azrael, but Deathwalker's got an ultimate, and that's the end of that fight. He might even be able to turn it around. Ice gets the leap out in time, but doesn't get far enough. Deathwalker turns around the 2v1, but can he get away from just the one in the bear? Azrael not committed to continuing the chase. Deathwalker makes it out, and with a kill.
Yeah, so that's when things get catastrophic. If you go 1 for 1 there, if Ice ends up dying and Deathwalker goes down, then it's not like the best gank for you, but it's not the worst gank for you either. Deathwalker getting a kill and managing to live. Yes, you burn the relics and you burn the ult. That slows the lane down a little bit, maybe gives Azrael a small amount of favor, but really it slows down the jungle. Ice going down, it's a little less time that he's up farming, a little more time for Johnny to be out there. You get another kill on that side of the map, so now an assist and the kill on board for Deathwalker. It's really solid.
Big bomb damage onto Zeros and Johnny. Johnny pops the ultimate and tries to run through. The Atlas ult and the Atlas pull going to be off the mark to take down the jungler. Johnny will make it back to the tier 1 tower, and rotation from Azrael will be unfruitful here. Only the beads burned by Johnny, but still an important relic nonetheless to take out.
Being able to slow down the Chalkman, that's a huge deal. He's now susceptible to damage, and despite the healing we saw earlier, something you should be worried about. This is a big rotation from Echrome. If he gets a bounce there, maybe something happens, but Zeros is in trouble.
Zeros low, but so is Okeanos. Zeros, he was in trouble. Echrome is the one in danger now, but the Jaguar misses from Ice. He's not able to find the last instance of damage onto Echrome. Echrome is just kiting him around the jungle while Trixtank closes the gap to help them out. Ice needs one hit. The bomb is just too late. Echrome able to make it out.
Trixtank, like, no mana to work with either, like, just a pure body to exist in the event there's a chase down and try to body block some things. Good play from Hex Mambo. Again, they get aggressive in the mid lane. They showcase what they have, maybe showcasing even more how those health bars, despite how low they get, there's a lot of self-sustain, team sustain that is going to exist there. Zhonghui, he can heal himself. Chalk, he can heal himself. Cthulhu doesn't necessarily heal himself as fully as the others, but realistically, he's just hard to kill. Terra, guess what? She makes up for the lack of healing in some of the others because she heals them. And then that stacks on top of Zeros and Johnny. So yeah, I think not only you had highlighted the Divine Ruin earlier, I think that's going to be like necessary at this point to try and deal with this team, especially from what we just saw. Zeros, in a little bit of trouble, has a lot of damage, in the Zhonghui. But he's going to need a lot more on the side of the Ferrymen if they want that kill to stick anytime that they chase him down and get him that low. Otherwise, Zeros is going to be able to do exactly what just happened. Get a lot of damage, heal himself, and then still surge forward with his team.
Oh, that was a lot of damage there from Johnny just onto Okeanos. Then I looked at the level difference, 9 versus 6. Trixtank hit with a couple of bombs and finds a double stun up against Okeanos and Gunter. Gunter immediately will dash himself out while Johnny zones them away. Big knockup though. Out of Deathwalker will hold Azrael. It's another knockup and an ult from Johnny to take down Gunter. Azrael on the run. The knockup is good. The Sever after will find the kill. Deathwalker on a big rotation helps find 2, but the blink from Ice will make sure that it's not going to be 3.
I really like how the Mambo are playing this. And this is where I don't get to talk about this often. I think, and I'm not sure that this is really a contested opinion. It's not a hot take, but knockups are like the best CC that you can have, right?
Good.
Because if you don't beads them like in the proper window, all of a sudden your beads are wasted, you're up in the air anyway, you can't use any of your abilities to get away until you land, things like that. And so I think that you get to see a lot of that combination from Hex Mambo. It's not necessarily stuns and lockdown, although they do have some of those, roots and stuns and things like that from the Terra and the Zhonghui. But you've got a knock-up from Cthulhu in the ult, and then you've got a knock-up from Johnny with his ult, and all of a sudden, it becomes just so difficult to escape, to just survive the fight, along with the silence that comes with it and the other CC that the Mambo are throwing out, plus the damage that has to come hand in hand with all those abilities. It just showcased, I think, there for Ice, but specifically for Gunter, there's not an easy escape in moments like that, and you're just going to have to eat a lot of that damage despite not wanting to. And, you know, at Ice level 9, you've got 3 levels before you're going to have beads. I think if Deathwalker, if Johnny, if Zeros can get aggressive, slow him down, and open up a starter fight, just slow him and CC him in whatever way they have. I guess really Zeros of the 3 I just listed is the only one with a stun, so maybe it's not the easiest thing to do, but there's no beads there. So even a slow is going to feel really confident for you and kind of kick things off.
Well, Styx Ferrymen are going to need to find something here if they can. I mean, it's 2 levels down out of Okeanos, a level down from Ice in the jungle, and 2 levels over in the solo lane. Azrael, since that first blood going down and then that team fight after, with one of those kills going over to Deathwalker, has really pushed Deathwalker up into the lead in that solo lane. Even in the dual lane with Streak Up and E-Chrome not really getting super involved so far. I mean, we saw a rotation from both of those into that earlier mid-fight. Neither of them got a kill or assist in there, but we've been able to see just a little bit of extra farm coming the way of E-Chrome.
Yeah, and honestly, it's something that you need to be worried about. I think this Hu Yi has already showcased what kind of potential it has in rotations. Hasn't necessarily shown off in the KDA, right? But you're going to get to see that more often. I think we mentioned it earlier, Streak Up has a really good Heimdall. Heimdall's good at taking someone out of the fight, staying alive, dealing good damage. But at this point, you're falling behind in lane. Your team's falling behind. So how much of that is going to matter to you? The safety is, but I mean, look at the damage that Johnny's able to get out in just a second. And with the knockup, that could be good.
The ult is good. Not enough follow-up damage from Johnny. Axe toss just off the mark. Streak Up will be fine, but losing out on that ultimate is going to be anything but here. Now E-Chrome does have some advantage in lane. Beads are still down by Streak Up, and that's the call for Hex Mambo to go to the Gold Fury. We do see a rotation in now from the Ferrymen. Okeanos does have ult, and we've seen one too many Atlas steals these days, and Mambo aren't going to take any chances with that one, but a triple bomb stun out of Gunter. That'll slow down the Mambo just a little bit.
Gold Fury is still in that awkward, do we want to dance with this or not phase? Yeah, no, they're going to leash it. So, you know, for the Ferrymen, that's actually a huge win, right? You're down 3,000 gold. If that Gold Fury goes the way of Hex Mambo, it's not like the end of the game, but you are talking all of a sudden about, okay, so how do we defend? You're not looking for fights anymore. You're not pressing forward. You are falling back and trying to look at just maintaining your side of the jungle, maintaining your towers as best you can. Maybe you could start flexing around a Pyromancer to try and alleviate some of the stress. But, you know, if it ends up going towards the Mambo, they get just enough ahead, and at the pace that they're already playing, they get to dictate what your gameplay is from that point forward. Keeping them off of it the way they did, all of a sudden opens up, you know, opportunities for them. Now they can go in forward and try to pull it. Although with the ward coverage on the left-hand side of the map, you're going to need a lot of sentries to make sure that you can do it without getting spotted. You can also go for Pyromancers. You can open up a little bit more to try and take some of the pressure of the otherwise mounting up and still pretty solid gold lead for Hex Mambo.
Yeah, I mean, only 12.5 minutes in, Mambo have a near 4,000 gold lead and even more in the XP department. So Mambo, with these 5 kills, have been able to just amass that from just the neutral farm alone. No objectives going down. Meanwhile, a 1v1, that ends abruptly. I thought maybe E-Chrome was going to go in there. Instead, it's Okeanos in the mid lane being aggressed on by Johnny and Trix Tank. About half health now on this Atlas. Good setup for Mambo to maybe make their way towards the Fury. Instead, for now at least, Johnny will go ahead and try and go for a red buff steal. We'll get it there. That Atlas ult going to be a little too early to secure that buff.
Well, E-Chrome, Streak Up. If that stun is able to come up in time, no, yeah, they don't have enough to lock down Streak Up. And that's, look, there's the glory of Heimdall. You're behind, you're not doing too well, there's a massive gank over onto your lane, and you just get out of it because you stood in a crystal for a couple of seconds. So really good play for them to be able to get out of there. The problem is now you've fallen behind, you've got a long cooldown on that. How do you get aggressive and try to fight into the Gold Fury?
How do you, not even fight into the Gold Fury, how do you fight into Deathwalker right now? He is a one-man army zoning out the entirety of the Ferrymen. That allows the Mambo to pick up the first major neutral objective of the game. Gold Fury finally goes down, and that pushes the lead for Hex Mambo up to nearly 5,000, sitting around that 4,700 mark with the XP right behind there. But that's just the downside of going against a Cthulhu that's not just doing okay, but ahead at this point. Deathwalker just ulted and stood there and said, I dare you to walk by me.
And I love that, like, not just using the ult, like, as early as Deathwalker did, but, like, showcasing that they knew they already had the presence, and it was just how do we zone them even further, right? We just forced Echrome to use Streak Up to use a giant dash and get out of here. So where do we exude that pressure? All of a sudden it's, okay, well, we just have to stop Gunter and we have to stop Okeanos. That's really easy for us to do if we have a giant Cthulhu in front of us. So moving forward with that, being able to create, again, a little bit of space between them, all of a sudden makes it easier and easier to continue pressuring them out. You get a Gold Fury, and now all those things I were saying where it was like, hey, if they get it, things get worrisome, and if they have things like that, it becomes a problem. Well, now that's all happening, right? Now you've got to be worried about that because all of a sudden they do have that massive gold lead. They do have the capabilities to just dictate which fights you can and cannot take on the map. And so you really have to, I think, address this in the pressure points if you're the Ferryman. You have to go for Pyromancers. And that's still kind of risky because the fights haven't been going your way. You have to hope for the best in terms of farm in the lane. And maybe try to get Ice on the board here. 0-1-0 is not typically where you expect to see the jungler.
No, it's typically also where you not expect to see a Wheelish over all the gods there in the jungle. A very notably early kind of game god, very early snowball that she can pull out here. But kind of looking back over to Deathwalker, it's always fun seeing the influence that Mogao has had over in the solo lane build. Because an item that we don't really ever see is something that Mogao really loved to build, which was this Hide of the Urchin, but who cares about that because it's dual lane. Echrome finally goes down. That does get the jungler involved, but the kill goes over to Streak Up.
And you know what? I'll take it, right? Anything that goes on in that lane, I think, is going to be a big win for them. Again, because you're just looking at it, you are falling behind. You're, right now, the win condition. I mean, you're 1-0. Everybody else has died, although maybe the win condition might not be the right term when you look at the map.
Well, it's going to be ultimate knock up there. Trixtank will actually get the credit to the kill thanks to the help of the Pridwin Shield getting the final pop there at the end of the day. But now it's a 3 versus 3. Okeanos gets caught out by the stun. Axe Toss does hit Gunter. That caused Johnny to go in. And the mid laner's at half health. Ice gets a pull onto Johnny, pulls him right back in the fire. But Johnny is healing through so much of it. Ice cannot find the final hits. The bomb is off the mark. Johnny is getting so low. The auto from Ice is good. Finally, Johnny will go down. But Gunter and Ice are low. I don't think they want to continue this chase against Trixtank.
Yeah, and honestly, I don't know if I want to try and chase Trixtank. Look, at this point, I think you're just excited if you're Ferryman because you're getting kills, right? And you're getting kills, I think, onto targets that are pretty high priority. I mean, going from 2-0-2 to 2-1-2 for Johnny, getting him off the board for a little bit, that should open up plenty of time for Ice to get some farm back in their belt and specifically try to equalize the experience more than anything. The gold is going to be something that the team has to worry about. It's really the level difference in jungle. It's only one, but it's still something that I think you're feeling across the board. Johnny has been able to kind of show up and just beat down anybody that was in his way, whereas Ice has been a lot slower. Now 16-16, I think makes it a little bit easier. And when you look at the net worth, wow, it took me a while to find specifically where Wheelish was. It's only, what, 500 difference, 700 difference between the two? And so it's not a devastating blow to them, but it is something that I think they're going to need to be aware of throughout all of this. Again, most of that's just team-wide, right? 4K gold. You got to be present for the next Oni Fury, and since no Pyromancer's gone down, I think there's a really good opportunity for them to get back into this.
And looking at that difference in the gold, a lot of that was over just in this dual lane from the supports alone. A 4-level XP gap between Okeanos and Trixtank here, and Trixtank was a solid, I think 1,700 gold up, if my math serve me correctly here. It's not a great place to be as an Atlas. No. One is being behind, but then being that far behind and that far down in gold. Okeanos will get spotted out here. Johnny able to get a good bit of damage onto the support, but it's been a rough game for Okeanos. Hasn't really been able to find that same level of control that we've come to know and expect out of these Atlases, and that's just because Trixtank is doing this to him constantly. Dash at him, stun him, force the ult, and now what does Okeanos do? Can't do much more.
See, but this is something, and you know, this is gonna, it kind of feels like I'm throwing shots at everyone in Europe, which might have to wait a little bit because Johnny gets pulled in.
Johnny just gave out a bomb. The ultimate does hit 2, but Trixtank is doing fine. Johnny will have to walk his way out. Okeanos at half health. Zeros comes in with the ghost and does a lot of damage, but Okeanos has the charge to get himself out. A lot of distance created by the support of the Styx Ferrymen. and that will allow him and all of his team to make it out. Hex Mambo, though, alive and healthy, can start at this Fury.
Yeah, 2 people back. It's a TKO essentially on Streak Up. There's no way that they're going to feel confident walking into these. Azriel and Gunter might be able to walk up, and a good couple of bombs could try to fight this. But I don't know if this is something you really want to try and clamp down on, either as the Mambo because you have barely any of your ults, you just have Deathwalkers, or on the other side if you're the Ferryman, because the fights haven't been going your way for the most part. Trying to walk forward into the Mambo is definitely something, again, that can be a little shaky. And this is what I was going to say earlier. And, you know, we're pretty critical. Like, sometimes we throw at Europe. It's not too uncommon to hear us talk about low kill count games, which is, this one's actually going to go up a little bit more with Johnny just picking up a clean one onto i-Size. I mean, that one, essentially a solo kill, should give him the Oni Fury. But look at the way the Mambo are fighting around this. This is the fight for the objective. They're getting aggressive only because they know there's something big to do afterward, and they're creating so much space in the process. That's what every one of these last couple of fights has been. It's just, how do we get this Oni Fury? How do we set ourselves up for success even more? And that's something that a lot of these teams in the SEC will be lacking in some of their fights. Sometimes you fight over nothing, and then it all comes out to a moot point. And sometimes you're not fighting over the right things. You're trying to just do an objective without creating that zone, creating that space. And so watching the Mambo here, I think, is something that is going to dictate a lot of, at least, their success throughout Europe, is how well they're controlling the map when they want to go for these gold objectives.
I mean, when we talk about, you know, the EU-SEC, it is always a much slower pace game. Usually we talk about it being methodical, or usually the biggest buzzword that we talk about with this scene out here. But there was always exceptions to the rule. You know, obviously that comes with everything out there. With NA, it was always this knockout, drag-out mud fight that you would go through, but you'd get those couple teams that would play a little bit slower here. We've been seeing EU kind of up their pace a little bit more, especially teams like formerly just F6, that roster there, now the Gilded Gladiators. They like to play a much quicker pace game, kind of to the same style that we saw out of, what was it, Elysium last year, who loved to be that more North American style of play where you just get in there, you get those fights, because nobody was answering to that kind of play style at times. Well, man, how do we fight against Elysium? How do you fight against Z-Chrome is the question that the Ferrymen are asking. But right now, for Streak Up, that is to get into his own Bifrost and get out. i-Size probably wishes he had a means of getting away that quickly here. He'll be able to walk out, but Johnny is hot on his tail.
Yeah, I think at this point, everyone's going to take a lot of damage. Probably not die. I don't think they're going to go for a Tier 2 dive while the Tier 1's up. They can push and get a lot of pressure on this side of the map. The Tier 2 might be in jeopardy because of the presence heavily fortified by Hex Mambo. And now Okeanos is going to die because he stepped up.
Yeah, maybe just a little too far there. Tier 1 is gone.
Under his Tier 2 is a little too far.
That's a little too, look, that's a little too far. Let's be real.
Yeah.
If you're stepping outside of your base, you're a little too far up here, Core. Might be the same case for Gunter. His Aegis is down. Does have his beats to get away, but doesn't get a chance to use him. Johnny will just pop him instantly. i-Size now low. Has to make his way back to the fountain as all of Hex Mambo have stepped up. And this is about as far as you can go. When there's a Cthulhu knocking at your Phoenix, when the Tier 2 is still up, how do you even walk past this?
And let's be clear, the only reason that dive isn't any heavier from Hex Mambo is because they were literally trying to take the Tier 2 because they couldn't damage the Phoenix. Now, look at this. I mean, a good swarm. Everyone's separated on Styx Ferrymen. The Phoenix is going to go down. This is Sans Fire Giant. This is just the team fight.
Ooh, the snipe will hit 0. It's not going to be quite enough damage there. That Atlas ult doesn't hit that hard here. Everybody's prots down just a little bit. A blink in from i-Size doesn't find a whole lot of value because Meyer out of Deathwalker will zone them back. Azriel blinks back in and gets into the middle of 4. It's now going to be a 3 versus 4. Zeros will not come back into this fight. The Suns have dropped back down to zone Azriel, but Okeanos will charge right through, get his team a little bit closer forward, pulls back in Deathwalker, pulls back in Johnny, but Deathwalker will go right back to Streak Up to fight against the Hunter. Beads now down, and Azriel somehow still alive throughout all this onslaught long enough for Johnny or Zeros to come back in. Okeanos goes down, i-Size goes down, and the Mambo have turned it right back.
I mean, this is just good chase down. Oh, what are you going to do? Gunter's the only one that has significant health here. Streak Up is healing that Aussie passive, putting in a lot of work around that camp. And so I think that is the saving grace. One more kill, and I think Mambo just in the game. I don't think they care about a fire giant. I think they just run down through mid, through the Phoenix, into the Titan room. Luckily, you're in this position. There's still 2 towers standing, so your Titan's a little tankier. And therefore, it's going to take a little longer for Mambo to win. But the problem is I'm talking about defense at best for the Ferrymen. I don't think you step up to this Fire Giant ever. And if you do, then you come with a lot of consequences. One lost fight around here, and it looks like no one's going to take the bait. Well, then all of a sudden, yeah, that's an easy win for the Mambo. So I like that the Ferrymen are playing this patiently. They don't really have any other options. So this is going to set things up for even more success for the Mambo. And now it's a discussion on priorities, where they want to go, right? We talk about the left side Phoenix, very important, brings fire minions so that it distracts someone on the team defending away from the next fire giant fight. I don't think you care about that much if you're the Mambo. I think that small aspect of the game, you have enough of a lead that doesn't matter. I think these towers are more important, not because of the gold, but because of the Titan health that it's going to affect. 2 Phoenixes, if you can burn down this right side, makes it a lot easier, gives you an easy point of contention to force a fight to happen with the Ferrymen. And if you win it, you just get to walk in and win.
Ferrymen will have to put up a defense on this right side. Hex Mambo have already made it into the Phoenix. Gunter off to the far side. Deathwalker up in Descent into Madness. Gunter is being zoned away by Johnny and Deathwalker in this fight. Deathwalker is barely taking any damage until now. Finally goes down, but so does the right side Phoenix. Hex Mambo able to take one objective and keep the 6 Ferrymen back.
Yeah, at least bouncing the Mambo away.
Zeros?
I don't know if I want to go for this chase. You might get a kill, but look at the damage output.
Oh, E-Chrome comes back with a big crit on the Ice Ice, takes him down, but Okeanos trades out one with his life at least, but E-Chrome has picked up the double kill. Now Azrael in the midst of the fray should go down here. This bear can only go so far. E-Chrome off the mark with the ricochet, but Deathwalker has the dash to get the kill.
And now, look, you've got 2 people. They're hard hitters, Gunter and Streak Up here. And they've got to do a lot of work to make this work out. 20 seconds for Streak Up until that beads comes back up. But there's a fire minion wave coming down mid. They still got Fire Giant and E-Chrome still alive, along with the Johnny build. It's a lot of damage. I'm surprised that Hex Mambo were going for the Phoenix and not the end.
They're going to try and take this last little safe haven away from the Ferryman, because who on the Ferryman is going to step up to stop this one? Gunter? Well, he can put some damage into Deathwalker, who walked all the way back there. But for now, Hex Mambo will just go ahead and strip away the 3 Phoenixes. Fury is up, so that can be their consolation prize. They're just going to go for the safe play.
Nah, I'm giving a mark against them. There's no, you should have ended the game there. I think that this, like, just legitimately, you had a fire minion wave, 4 people with Fire Giant against 2 carries. That Titan would not have survived. Granted, 3 Phoenixes down. Like, it's not like you lose because of that. You're still in such a massive win state. You've got 5 towers standing. You still got FG power play for another minute and a half. You mentioned it. You're going to get the Primal Fury here. With one of those Phoenixes respawning, maybe there's a slight sliver of hope shining in for the Ferryman off of that. And realistically, that's all you're doing, right? When you take a play like that, when there's such an easy route for you to walk in and win, again, only having to deal with 2 squishy targets that, yeah, good damage output, but how far is that going to go in the grand scheme when you still have all of your relics? I think that all you've done is give the Ferryman another opportunity to try and fight forward. Is it a great opportunity for the Ferryman? Not particularly, but it is still something that if one fight goes wrong for the Mambo, it falls apart.
Okeanos stunned as soon as he charged in. Trickstank finds Ice Ice and Streak Up with the root in the back line. Deathwalker descends into Madness. He'll slam out some big AoE damage up on a Gunter. Okeanos is trying to run back through the entirety of the Hex Mambo team to get back to base, but Ice Ice goes down. Okeanos goes down. Azrael short to follow after as the knockup is good. E-Chrome will dash in, get the double kill right on top, and we're right back to where we were just only a minute ago. Ultimate on the Streak Up will be good from Johnny, but the Titan should go down here to Hex Mambo unless they decide to play with their food a little while longer. Good lord, they will. Gunter will go ahead and just eat his entire health bar to zeros there. Streak Up might be the only one left alive at the end of this one because the Titan certainly will not. Nope, Streak Up won't get that opportunity here. Hex Mambo will make a clean deicide and end the game.
Yeah, 19-3, they controlled that game pretty much from the get-go. I think that first blood, there were still several opportunities from first blood to like 6 minutes in, but then we started seeing groupings from Hex Mambo, good team fights were a little more coordinated, assaults on mid, assaults over into the duo lane, and focused pressure on those buffs to just surge forward into the jungle. And then all of a sudden you get a small amount of a gold lead, and then it continues to grow, and then it continues to grow, until suddenly, oh, now you're talking about, for the Ferrymen, having to just defend your tier 2s, and then suddenly that slips to Phoenixes, and then suddenly that just slips to Titans, and unfortunately for them, they weren't able to do either.
Yeah, Hex Mambo will come out with a very commanding game number 1 win over the Styx Ferrymen. We'll take a quick break, and then we'll come back to get set up for game 2. Hello and welcome back to the EUSCC. Hex Mambo finds a pretty convincing win here in game number 1 up against the Styx Ferrymen. I mean, from minute number 1, essentially, we get a gank over there in the solo lane. Kill goes over to the way of Hex Mambo, and from that point on, they never lost control of that lead. It was pretty much in their pockets the entire time through here in game number 1. J-Mac and Gore here for our first set of the day, talking about game number 1 there, but as you kind of said at the end, there's not much more to talk about. I mean, Mambo just got the lead, and they never lost it.
Yeah, pretty much, right? They get ahead early on, and then that lead leads to another lead, and then that lead leads to more of a lead, and then that lead, you'll never guess it, J-Mac, leads to even more of a lead. And like, I think there were only a couple opportunities where things were, like, missed for them, right? I had highlighted earlier, I was around the Oni Fury fight, I think, like, 15 minutes in, when, you know, they're pressuring out, they're zoning really well. I think this was actually the true turning point. First Blood meant nothing. Deathwalker getting a turnaround kill in a 2v1 that was a gank on their lane, that really did dictate the rest of the game for a majority of this. And so really kicks things off for them. Again, a lot of control. Johnny was able to really lead the way, I think, on this chalk. But you get to see Deathwalker in a lot of these replays, and it's going to be for good reason. The only thing I think that we could have seen from Hex Mambo that really would dial up and kind of like clean up the quote-unquote gameplay was just legitimately at the 25-minute mark, like a few seconds after this. They get this kill onto Azrael, and then they decide to go for, you know, the left side Phoenix, try to get the full trifecta as opposed to just going for the end. I think that was the only questionable thing in my mind that this team did. Otherwise, it was really clean around objective play, good zones, good turnarounds during ganks, good aggression across the board, and it just came down to, okay, well, you delayed the end slightly, and I think that's where you could improve, and when you only have one note like that afterward for an SEC team, that's marvelous. That's wonderful.
Yeesh, 28,000 damage out of E-Chrome. Interesting damage taken, 16,666 there out of zeros. Just a funny one number that, those numbers like that always just kind of stick out to me there. We had one, I think it was one SPL set where we had a 10K player damage exactly like on the mark kind of thing.
Those feel
there.
good. When it's
those
just like
really,
flat.
Those are really cool.
It's a different feeling. I'm sure, like, I don't know if Zeros or whoever, I guess you said it was SBL, whoever it was sitting there like, look at that, flat zero. I screenshot things like that.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that makes me feel better about myself when it's just like a clean number.
That or when you get like one extra player damage over somebody else on your team to get a win like that, it always feels good. But now moving on to picks and bans. Game number 2 here between the Styx Ferrymen and Hex Mambo to face off. Styx Ferrymen, they need to get a win here. That way they can continue their chances to try and get that win. Hex Mambo can clean it out in 2 if they find a dub over here. But a lot of the same similar bans we're seeing. This Sobek ban, a lot of respect over to Trixtank, the fact that Styx Ferrymen are willing to first ban this god. Yeah,
honestly, I think that it showcases how much this Sobek can elevate it, right? I think that you have to be worried about a lot when you're worried about Hex Mambo. I think I had mentioned the Heimdall. Won't be surprised again if maybe that gets stripped away here to stop E-Chrome from getting it. But realistically, this Sobek, I think the Bacchus in the same breath because they've both been banned both games with the Sobek more than anything. Trixtank ruins lives when he has this pick. And so you don't want to play against it at any opportunity you can stop him. And so I think this is just a good start for everything. And I won't be surprised if by the end of this, in like, hey, most banned versus Hex Mambo, it's probably going to be Sobek.
I've got a feeling that Kumbhakarna is going to sneak his way here for Hex Mambo. Trixtank, one of the only other players in SMITE in general. I was going to say in the SCC, but I think in general in competitive play, Trixtank and Moga are like the only 2 players who would go to that god.
I'm glad you mentioned Moga, because that's the only other example I could think
of. I have to mention Moga. I cannot forget Moga, who brought that menace into the solo lane and has found success with it. But it will not be at least a Kumbhakarna over in the dual lane here. It's going to be Fafnir on the side of the Mambo.
I know he's not in this set, but I like, credits to Mogao, because Mogao used to, like, only ever competitively play Hades in solo lane. And it was always a fun Hades. I like Mogao's Hades.
Good on him.
But it has gotten very interesting to watch the, like, eclectic god pool that is Mogao's solo lane, because it's a lot of Guardians and not the ones you think of. And that's just makes it fun to watch. And again, something I think that, you know, you have to evaluate here. I don't, like, you know, Deathwalker just had a phenomenal Cthulhu game. You don't even have to go back to that if you don't want to. If you want to, go for it. But I think that Deathwalker as well, again, another player that's just been so wildly accomplished throughout their career. that even, I mean, looking at it, like with the Emojo, the Persephone, anything that can dive is going to feel solid here.
I'm trying to remember. I think I looked up the stat on Mogao for like his time played, and this obviously only counts things like that aren't in customs and in competitive games and whatnot. But he has like 156 hours on Kumbhakarn, which is an absurd number to even hear, and then like 200 something on Hades or whatnot. But that's enough about Mogao. More back into this one here. Fafnir Chernobog for the dual lane on the side of Hex Mambo. Meanwhile, it's Heimdall Yemoja. Interesting that Yemoja has found her way back into here, because it does always seem like teams kind of quote-unquote forget about the god. Like, they just don't really necessarily put a lot of stock into this god, especially over in EU.
Yeah, I think that realistically, and like looking at like the Chang'e band, like you said, Zeros is like the only one who plays it. Played it 2 years ago, despite whether or not it was meta. Played it last year in SPL, despite whether or not it was meta. And you know what? I would be willing to bet would play it this year, whether or not it was meta. And so I think like trying to just limit those down a little bit more. Although last time it was like, hey, cool, we committed so many bans to try and stifle the mid lane. And then at the end of the day, he still got Zhong Kui and had that phenomenal performance. So like, oh no, you slowed him down slightly, I guess. So realistically, it's a couple of bans that more speak to, I don't want to deal with this, than it does necessarily say, okay, this is like the thing to ban right now.
We'll see if the Styx Ferrymen can bring it back here in game number 2 up against Hex Mambo. As we jump ourselves right in, we saw Persephone get locked in here on the side of Styx Ferrymen. That'll give a little bit of extra early pressure towards that mid lane, as Agni it takes a little bit to get online. Persephone in roughly that same vein here. But I think maybe the more kind of interesting one here is this tier. I remember when Azriel kind of came in during the SCC Worlds qualifier tournament, I believe. It came in, if I'm not mistaken, it was kind of subbing in for that time and had a knockout performance on that tier.
Yeah, I'm trying to think about it, and realistically, man, who was the last like great tier that we had? And realistically, it's player name redacted, because I'm not going to talk about banned players, right? And so realistically, you're falling into this spot where if you've got a great tier, which as what we've seen, it's really Europe that does it more than anybody else, then you can change games. And I think that's why we start to see as many of these beads that are showing up, right? Even if you're playing something that's relatively tanky or is going to be building tanky, this tier can ruin your life with one good Fearless combo and some backup. Sometimes doesn't even need the backup. And so realistically, again, this is uncomfortable, I think, for the Mambo to start things off. But I think, as you had mentioned, maybe the proving ground for Azriel to showcase what this tier can do.
And we'll see here into this dual lane. Okeanos streak up under fire. Okeanos specifically down to about a quarter of his health right now, as he's slowly having to walk his way back towards the tower. We see Ikrom go for this Chernobog. It's a pick that we don't see very often anymore.
Yeah.
There's a time frame where Chernobog was like, like the meta pick to go to. Typically we hear things like when crit is big, Chernobog always pops himself back up here. But we still don't get to see him very much.
Chernobog falls, in my mind, to the category. We got to see him, I think, first pick a few times last year. But really, he falls into that weird middle ground. Okay, Azriel, is going to back off here. Maybe Johnny's in trouble, though?
Beads have to be used to get away from Slice and Dice. Deathwalker can potentially turn this one around, but with a D-Transform, that loses out on the CC that this Kakulin would have had. Johnny really playing with fire over there. This solo lane has been action-packed ever since we've seen this new start pop up. We've been seeing so much aggression on this right side of the map. We see it continued here. Ice Ice going for a Harpy steal. Johnny will be able to at least deter Ice Ice from stealing more than just the one small Harpy with Zeros here. Ice Ice gets a nice little heal back with that shield, but needs a little bit more. Maybe some help from Gunter will finally slow them down.
You have to watch. I was immediately looking at where Azriel was going to be coming in the event that we got like a really early solo rotation. I think that Ice Ice ultimately comes out net gain. It was like one small Harpy that he picked up in that. So maybe that's a win? I don't know. There's a lot of small things. The beads going down is a huge dub for them, although you do have to use your blink if you're Ice Ice, so a lot of your close gap may be disappearing on the Nemesis. But I like to see the presence from the Ferrymen, because guess what was missing for a majority of last game? Any of that, right? You didn't get to see Ice Ice on that side of the map for a hefty majority, if not all of the game. And so being able to be a little more proactive, get aggressive, walk forward at least, and strip some things away, I think is going to be a good showcase for them, as long as they don't lose their lives in the process. That's always going to be the caveat. You overcommit to something like that, no buff is worth dying for, unless you're support, in which case some buffs are worth dying for, and you just got to figure out when that is. Also, time on the game. Don't die to like a purple buff, or for a purple buff 25 minutes in.
Yeah, probably not.
Whether you're a support or not. But like 3 minutes, it's not the end of the world. Still probably not quite as worthwhile. Your life's pretty helpful.
Azriel steps into the tower. That last shot will not connect. Ultimate. Not sure if that was used by Azriel as the fight started out there. It seems so. Deathwalker does have access to his ultimate now, so should be fine in case a dive continued there by Azriel. But now that we're seeing Azriel finally kind of allowed to play the game again, allowed to actually fight back in solo. I mean, that was kind of the downside, you know, falling behind early as an RDO means that you don't really get to have nearly as much fun. You don't get as active in these fights. But as a tier, you get some early pressure. Now we're talking.
Yeah, and you already, like you said, are getting to see a little bit of that. Has the level 5 available for them, so I'm excited to watch Azriel's like arc through this game and what exactly they decide to get aggressive in. Because as far as I can tell right now, it looks like they've skipped their ult, or they're just delaying leveling it up, one of the two. And, you know, that can be good early on. You had mentioned having some lane pressure, but that's a great way to open up and continue that amount. Your clear is just going to be on the rise, and it's going to make things a lot easier for you if, yeah, you have your 5-point split between your Fearless.
Well, didn't seem like an ult was even picked up by Azriel.
No, he skipped it.
He is not gone for this ult at all. We'll see if maybe he picks it up during the midst of this fight. Johnny gets evaporated by the 6 Ferrymen. It's a first blood to the Order side team, and Azriel will continue to neglect going for an ultimate. It is just all of your ability damage out here. Only your 1 and your 2 is what's necessary for this man.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, what is Tier's ult used for?
Damage.
And 9 times out of 10, you're either going in with it or you're getting out with it. There's not a whole lot else. It's not like, you know what? I think I'm going to have my ult just for funsies here. Like, most of the time, it, like you said, either you're just trying to get a little bit of damage to kick off a fight, or you're using it as a get me the hell out of here button. There's not a lot of in-between for it. And so, do you need it early on if you're the one who's kind of controlling it? I mean, it's still safe, but who's going to be the one putting pressure on you? Johnny's been getting pushed out of his own jungle by Ice. Deathwalker hasn't been winning the lane as of yet. In fact, they're both at a deficit. 1 level in the jungle, 2 levels for the solo lane. I think Azriel is in the right to continue doing this, and like, you don't need it until you feel like you're in danger, because otherwise all you're doing is getting more pressure. You're Fearless, it's hitting harder. Your cleave, it's gonna hit harder and heal you more, so you have a lot more presence in this lane. And you will need to be a little more cautious around some of the CC because you don't have that, although Tier's passive, again, coming into play there and helping him out a little bit. And so you're not really too stressed out, I think, if you're Azriel. In fact, if anything, you're playing this in a fun way that really showcases how well this matchup's going.
I wonder what level he'll actually pick it up, because he's at level 7 now. So he's got 4 points in one ability, 3 in another. 10 would be whenever both your 1 and your 2 would be maxed out if you're just following that same suit. So at earliest, level 11 if he just skips everything until then, but then he still has the stance switch, which he can throw a point into.
I'm feeling level 9. I don't know why, but level 9's standing out to me in the ethos.
9 sounds about right. Like, that's like the perfect moment to do so, because it feels like that's when like your next power spike come through. E-Chrome can't not get to the sky though. That's Ice coming up. Zero's a little bit late on the snipe to get that ultimate in there. Okeanos stuck between 2. Trixtank goes aggressive on Ice and misses out on the hammer. A crucial miss out of Trixtank means that the jungler for the 6 Ferrymen can find their way out and find a kill from earlier on.
And again, another huge deal because it goes on to Ice 1-0-1 being part of both of the kills. This is where this team typically does well, is when Ice is doing well and Ice is able to get, you know, hands-on in the game a little bit earlier. And so I like seeing what they're doing, and I like seeing the pressure that they're going for. And because they're already successful on right, I love that they immediately transition to get some of that pressure on left. It's where they were losing both last time. E-Chrome didn't need a lot of help to get ahead of Streak Up in game number 1. And so now they're trying to slow that down just the old-fashioned way. Kill him so he can't farm. Deathwalker didn't need a lot of help prior to get ahead, but did have the help. And so now they're trying to slow it down and control this right-hand lane as well. It's making things a little harder for the Mambo.
And Ezreal will need a lot of damage here on this tier, but that heal in blue stance will be good. And there it is, level 9. There's an ultimate. So you called it right on the money, Gore. Level 9 is where Ezreal will finally put a little bit of fear into himself to pick up that ult. And maybe that was just because Johnny was on the way over. Maybe if Johnny didn't, pop himself on the map, not even sure if they did get spot on a ward at any point there, but finally.
It's just like the right number. And like it feels weird to say that, so I'm trying to think of the right way to explain it. But like my favorite example, and maybe the best example, is like the opposite of why Scylla is really good for level 9, because at level 9 for Scylla, you skip that point in your ult and try to put it somewhere else so you can get level 5 and crush and get your passive online.
Deathwalker jumps up, but is getting pushed against the wall and cannot get to the portal that Zeros had thrown behind him. Ice down low, and Echrome on his rotation will find 1 kill. So finally, Mambo have put themselves on the board, but Azrael has put himself out of position. No ultimate available, and then a whiff on the Lawbringer. Portal will be missed out there, but Echrome will pick up the double kill. Hex Mambo put themselves on the board with their Hunter. Streak up in a 1v1 against Johnny. That Johnny is not doing so hot on beads, and the knockback or the immunity are going to be used there from Streak Up to make sure to get away. Johnny, on the worst in the trade, has to go back to base.
Yeah, Streak Up, get that kill, and all of a sudden I think that trade, albeit still worse for the Ferrymen, at least comes out maybe even, is how I would look at the scales afterward. Otherwise, that's just a net loss for them, right? It's a great fight from Streak Up. Looks really cool. You didn't get anything, though. So, at the end of the day, it's a little bit of delayed time that Johnny wasn't farming, didn't get a kill, and he had to stand at the speed buff kind of awkwardly for like 10 more seconds before it spawned just to feel, some of that experience coming their way and get something done. Otherwise, you get a double kill for Echrome, showcases why this Chernabog is so great. We were talking about it earlier. One of the things that he always brings, whether he's in meta or not, whether it's a crit meta or not, he's got global presence. He's going to be able to just show up in the middle of a fight somewhere, and all of a sudden, any given fight, if that ult is up, can go from a 2v2 to a 3v2, a 1v2 to a 4v whatever number I'm trying to throw out there, right? Either way, he's always that extra man that's just going to be able to show up and put damage out there. And that's a good example of what happens over there on right, is, a little delayed for everybody, and if it's just 2 members of Hex Mambo, you might get a kill. Ice maybe goes down, Azrael maybe goes down, but I don't think you get both. You get Echrome over there as well, and it's low commitment, doesn't take a lot of time to travel over there, you just go up and land, and then all of a sudden, it's a heavier fight. You get the double kill onto your Hunter, and you slow down the 2 that have been really running the game for the Ferrymen, and that gets you right into a position where you can feel relatively even.
Echrome gets in a little early to where Streak Up is. That Bifrost will allow Streak Up to get back to that tier 1 tower. So Echrome will just use the ult to get back into lane. Probably the safest ult back to lane that you'll see out of a Chernabog, and maybe one of the least safe jungle positions that you'll see for Ice here to start this one out in this 2v1. Deathwalker very far behind in this solo lane, complete opposite of what we saw in game number 1. Okeanos gets a big shield of himself, but ultimate out of Johnny is enough to break through the last of that shield, but Gunter turns it around as Johnny stepped too far into the tower. A 1-for-1 trade in the mid lane. Trades the jungler of the Mambo for support on the Ferryman when Zeros with no mana means nowhere for this Giannis to go. Ice puts a second one up on the board.
Yeah, that's, again, a decent engage, I want to say, but then just, slip-ups throughout all of that. Hex Mambo were trying to do what they were doing last time, but this time last game, they had a 3,000, 4,000 gold lead. This time, they're fighting at a deficit, right? The shock isn't hitting as hard as it did. Zeros and the Zhong Kui, tanky, has a lot of self-peel, and is able to stay alive. On the Giannis, you hit your 2 and then you cry a little bit because you don't have a lot of damage outside of that. Your tankiness completely evaporated. I mean, you're a squishy mage again, right? So neither of the relics being used, no need to use them. By the time we saw him going down, it was absolutely going to be a death no matter what. But I think you're seeing the change in presence, specifically in the mid lane, that this pick and style change from Zhong Kui to Giannis can bring, as well as just a good pickup. Ice on this Nemesis has been a lot more refreshing to watch than what we got to see out of the Awilish.
And that's one of the things we talked about in game number 1, when Ice can just play these more damage-focused characters, these more kind of high performers. You get these early, if you can find an early lead kind of gods, you're going to be good going towards the late game. The Kamazats and the Chalk are the 2 that we talked the most about with them earlier on here. But that Nemesis kind of fits that same playstyle. Sure, her damage output early isn't remarkable, but this Hydra's Lament gets talked about so much with this god. It's a perfect item to build along with it, and Ice is able to make great use of it. When Ice is off these control-style characters, he really has been breaking out of his shell.
Yeah, and I think that what we're starting to see, and again, this is where my problem is for the Ferrymen, is it's a little heavy-handed. I think Azriel's a lot more involved this time around, so that's a boon to them. But 2-1 and 3, all 5 kills affected by Ice, 2-0 for Gunter, so a lot of good damage from mid. What happens if Ice gets killed off in the beginning of a fight, right? That's the only issue I think this team has had is, weeks past, they've looked really solid in the early game, and it's just when Ice gets targeted that things fall apart for him. So I just want to see how they can adapt.
Giannis rooted inside the jungle, has a couple more Riptides to buy some extra distance here, and that is the downside of fighting the emoji, but there's the upside of having a Giannis for you. That portal will close up some of that gap, but Okeanos is just a little too tanky for the side of Hex Mambo to find a kill and a pick on this Yemoja. But man, you want to talk about annoying things to deal with. That's why we see so many Yemoja bans, because her escapability with those Riptides is just astronomical.
Yeah, being able to just drop all of your Omi for that, it feels really good.
Oh no,
and
Zero's got baited.
There's no way, like, you either go through the wall and unfortunately die, or you don't go through the wall and, well, unfortunately die. I don't know if there was a win option there for Zeros.
Yeah,
Maybe an angle win, right? If you change the portal slightly and you don't walk into the Persephone ult.
Because the ult was already there, so it's not like Gunter had lined it up perfectly timed to go right past the tower at the same time that Ice gets them through. It was just chilling there, just vibing and having a good time. Unlike Echrome, not having a good time up against Azriel. Lawbringer will force the Aegis out of the Hunter, but Azriel will continue to pump out that damage. And with Ice here, that should be a kill onto Echrome. Not enough damage though in the tower. Will scare Ice to go away there. Azriel not taking that one. That means Ice can't find the kill. Echrome makes it out. And Johnny on the run, half health on this Chop.
Yeah, this is where things could potentially be shifting for the Mambo, right? You're starting to get a little tankier on those that need it. Johnny's a long way from really, I think, being a hefty part of this game. We've just saw the damage that Johnny's outputting. It's not crazy right now. And 26 stacks, now up to 28 there for the Transcendence. It's going to take a little while before that chalk is hitting, I think, at its full potential. And you can see where the gold gap is starting to pay its way just a little bit in favor of specifically Ice here, doing a lot more damage early on, has a tier 2 over nothing sitting there in that slot for Johnny, although I assume when he backs he's going to have enough for something. But it's just taking a little longer overall for him. Yeah, he's got 1,600, so he should be able to pick up something to balance things out. But the damage numbers coming out from the Ferrymen right now just hit harder. They've got more items online, whether it's tier 3s or tier 2s or what have you. And they've been a little more presence. I think Hex Mambo, if they can continue this rate, are going to have a good team fight, is just getting to that point comfortably without falling too far behind. It's 2 levels for solo. Not actually a deficit in the jungle, but then there's a 2-level deficit over there in mid. So you're losing some of the heavy hitters for him.
Streak up in danger. Beads popped early, and that'll be enough of a win for Hex Mambo. Johnny throws the axe over the wall and will teleport over the wall to get themselves away from Ice, who's just been relentless inside of this jungle. But most of the game that we have been watching, Ice has been there, top right side of the jungle, keeping the solo lane back, keeping the jungler back of Hex Mambo. And I like this aggression that Ice has put up, but Mambo will respond to start up the Gold Fury. 4 strong River's Rebuke out of Okeanos, but it's a little bit short to try and steal this one away. Mambo get the Gold Fury, but can they find the fight out? Gunter drops a big ultimate in the midst of the team fight, but Trixtank and Johnny will both be able to teleport themselves out, but with 3 of the Ferrymen chasing in with the help of that Riptide, should be enough to close the gap. But unfortunate for the Ferrymen, there's a Giannis, and so the portals will get the team through the wall.
Yeah, it's an ult commit from Zeros, but realistically, if you lose Trixtank there, it's still worthwhile for you, right? You're behind, you get a Gold Fury, Trixtank isn't worth as much, you feel pretty good about it. You don't lose Trixtank there, yeah, you commit a lot of your ults, but you manage to all stay alive, you still lose a tier 1, so like, not necessarily a wash, but slightly less in favor of Hex Mambo. And so I think that we get to see a good call from them, good play around the map, good fallback, good retreat. But they need a lot more of that. They need like 2 or 3 more of those to take the lead. Maybe just 2 of them to try and balance things out. But a good team fight for them could showcase, I think, what the coming future is for the Hex Mambo. And they need a lot more. I mean, it just needs to be precise. I think the Ferrymen are playing together a little bit better. Again, their damage output just feels higher as of right now, and it's because it is, right? Most of the members are just sitting over their opposition on that side. The only person that I think has the lead is about 1,300 damage difference between E-Chrome and Streak Up, and that's probably majority from that double kill earlier. So realistically, I think that, I mean, the Mambo here, not a bad spot. Not a good spot.
It's not great. Johnny was able to go back and finally finish up that third item. CAD Shield now online for this shot. As we approach, 18 minutes in, we're about 4,000 gold lead up for the side of the Styx Ferrymen, which is a lead that they didn't get to have last game. It was pretty much the complete opposite. They never got to see a gold lead in game number 1. Now they have this 4K lead, but they're not really pushing it the same way that the Hex Mambo did in game number 1. Hex Mambo got that lead. It was nonstop. Fight here, fight there, kill here, kill there. Get these objectives on one side, get the objective to the opposite in there. And when the Pyromancer went down for the Ferrymen, what was the Mambo's response? They went to Gold Fury and picked it up for themselves.
Being able to pick up something like that, again, I think, like, overarching, depending on where you're fighting, Gold Fury and, like, the Furies are more valuable than the Pyromancer, except for when it's a Fire Giant dance. Like, then all of a sudden, Primal Furies, like outside of Fire Giant, it probably goes Primal, then Pyro, then it comes down to the other Furies, like Oni because of the presence it can give you. Primal because it can help you shred the FG, but Pyro, in my mind, becomes a lot heavier of a toll, not because of any gold, but just because if you take a little bit of poke, you'd get back into the fight a lot faster.
Deathwalker will have to head back a little bit, maybe not all the way back to base. Transformation means that Deathwalker can stay in this fight a little while longer. But that's going to be an ultimate commit out of Ice as this Fire Giant is up. No team really willing to make a commit towards it. Maybe just a fight instead. Trix Tank down a couple of levels in the soul lane, wants to steal away the Scorpion as a Fafnir. Going to be a very difficult task, to say the least here. Trix Tank looks like he did manage to somehow, did he manage to actually steal that one away, it seems. I don't see the enhanced buff icon on any of these buffs here on the side of the Ferrymen. Ezreal will get the beads from E-Chrome, the tier. Really starting to pop some damage out there, but you look at the way that Azrael is built, it's mostly these kind of more kind of weirder tank items here. I mean, you got the Witchblade and the Wingblade. Both those do provide some procs, but it's mostly a lot of movement speed and HP.
And you know what? Go back in time, we used to see a ton of that, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like, if you saw Tier, there was one build that Tier was going to go for, and it was, I'm gonna zoom. I'm gonna build this. I'm gonna have a lot of health and a lot of movement speed, and I'm just gonna be everywhere on the map. And it worked out pretty well for him, but again, a lot of those items, like some changes that come through, maybe not making him work out as well. The Wingblade is maybe not as surprising to me as specifically the Witchblade. Not something I'm used to seeing just in general. I mean, I feel like this year it's gotten a lot more like limelight on it and spotlight on it, but it's not like the typical item for a lot of these players. I like it personally, and I think it's going to be a fun one here because you're looking at it, all of a sudden Kukulkan, Chalk, and Chernobog, they're just not hitting you as much, as fast. And so you do get to keep yourself safe, and if you're the one who's diving deep like that, it's going to work out really well for Azrael and potentially help your teammates.
Frenzy for this Fire Giant. River's Rebuke are up. Trix Tank will dive into the midst of 4, but the Fire Giant's not down just yet. Deathwalker goes in, doesn't steal it away, but now the fight is going the way of Mambo. Ice low in the backline. Deathwalker dives into the midst of 3, but that is pretty much all of his health bar gone. A portal for some extra movement speed to find a way out. But meanwhile, it's Azrael, the big beefy tank in the backline, bullying out E-Chrome. Gunter taking down 1, Streak Up taking down E-Chrome, and Zeros on the run as 2 are down for Hex Mambo.
Yeah, I think separated, a lot of people wanted to kill Ice, but it's hard to chase him down.
Wow.
And now it's just clean control. I mean, both Game 1 and Game 2 can be, succinctly put. So far, we'll see if Game 2 continues, although, look, I'm looking at 30 seconds, 40 seconds without E-Chrome and Johnny, respectively. I'm starting to say maybe you knock this Phoenix down and push a little harder onto the Titan room. It's going to be tanky, but you've got the wiggle room.
Yeah, the minions are here. Styx Ferrymen will walk up, 5 versus 2. 1 second now on Trix Tank, who has ultimate on respawn. Titan under fire by 5, and it's a lot of damage coming out from Gunter. He gets stunned out. Draconic Transformation out. Trix Tank won't go very far. Deathwalker takes a spill up against Gunter, and the entirety of Hex Mambo take a spill up against the Styx Ferrymen. Game number 2 will bring us now to Game 3, Gore.
And the best way I can describe both of those games is a team got ahead early and then played their lead really well, and the other team didn't play into it the best way they could have. I think that we get to see a lot of presence from the Ferrymen throughout that game. I think Ice just has a phenomenal game, and it makes it a lot more difficult for the Mambo to really be present anywhere. Everybody kind of fell behind, and it's because Ice decided to help put them behind. It starts over in solo lane. You control Deathwalker. All of a sudden, it becomes harder for them to be present in some of these team fights. Johnny falls behind. A little bit of a slower build made it harder for that jungle to feel impactful as opposed to getting the first blood in game 1. And so they just kick things off and, again, play their lead really well.
Now lead is able to allow at least bring these Styx Ferrymen now to a tied set. Where we're 1-1, we'll take it to a break, then we'll come back to see who's going to break that tie and take the set. Hello and welcome back to the EUSCC. The Styx Ferrymen able to pull it out here in game number 2 to bring us to a tie game in our first set of the day up against the Hex Mambo. Hex Mambo, game number 1, pretty dominant. From minute 1, they were able to take over and continue that lead. And then the exact same thing happened in game 2, except for the opposite team. Styx Ferrymen over here at Gormizer, able to take a lead very early on, and then Ice never let off the gas in the jungle.
Yep.
Pretty much zoned 2 people away from farm the entirety of the game, and that really allowed the Styx Ferrymen to be able to find a lead here.
Yeah, and once again, they play the lead really well. They don't overextend and overexert themselves in certain instances, and realistically, they just do a lot more damage early on. I mean, there were a lot of times, like, just watch like how much a slice and dice will do, how much Gunter is able to do from a distance. It didn't feel like they were really worried about their damage numbers throughout a lot of that, and they had no reason to be because they were just smacking people down relatively easily throughout the duration of that game. I think, we got to see some fun plays from the opposite side where things go well, I think, for the Ferrymen. But not as many as you would hope, right? Echrome, this is like the best rotation that they had if they were the Mambo. And it was maybe the last time that it felt relevant that there was a Chernobog in the game, period, right? We didn't get to see a lot of crits. We didn't get to see a lot of those ults make a difference. On the other side, we did see a ton of Ice all over the board, whether the damage shred from the ult was palpable or if it was just slice and dice onto zeros and some smackdowns. It was too much for them to handle.
Yeah. Unfortunately here for the side of Hex Mama, they just could not really deal with Ice. They got one kill on him in that rotation from Echrome early on into the game, and then from that point on, Ice didn't really have to worry about too much, put out a lot of damage. Gunter put out a lot of kills on this Persephone, and a lot of damage as well. I mean, 12,500 for him. Azriel, 13,000 plus on this tier, and this is something that it kind of opposites itself from game one, where Azriel didn't get to be proactive at all, didn't really get to be a part of any of the team fights, or really part of even the laning phase on this RDO versus Cthulhu. You put Azriel on something a little bit more comfortable here, this tier, a much more signature pick towards them. And then Deathwalker going for this Cucullin. It's something that we kind of glossed over in the picks and bans, but Cucullin has not really been seeing a whole lot of success as of late.
Or picks. And
that too.
Maybe they go hand in hand, right? Like he sees a lot less
not
success.
Not seeing picks, not winning. Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. I don't know. It feels
how does that,
something here is related, and I don't know what. I'm trying to put it together. You get the Charlie Day meme with the cork board where you're trying to find the link.
What does it mean?
Yeah, I don't know. It didn't do well, all right? And I don't even think it was anything for Deathwalker there. I just think that lane unfortunately got out of hand pretty quickly. The tier, we had highlighted a lot, skips his ult for a majority of it, so he has a lot more pressure and a lot more damage throughout the duration of that game. And then when it came to rotations, he just did more, right? The tier was tankier. The tier was CCing a lot harder. We saw like 3 or 4 times where Deathwalker just got blown up upon entry of a fight.
Yeah, it was not a fun time over there for Deathwalker in the solo lane. Let's see if things change up, though, here. Picks and bans for game number 3 between the Ferrymen and Hex Mambo. This will be the first time that Hex Mambo actually end up getting a first pick selection for themselves here up against the Ferrymen. And Heimdall has been the first pick that has gone the way of the Ferrymen the entire time of this set. They win it for game 1. They win it here for game number 2. And when you look over at the side of Hex Mambo, the players that they have onto this team, I'm looking at Echrome, probably one of the best Heimdalls in the EU League specifically, yep. Right up there alongside Vaporish Coast. I would put those two honestly pretty equally, almost on even footing ground between those two here. So I would not be surprised if Hex Mambo decide to pick that one up as a first pick for themselves.
Yeah, honestly, feels like it's been pretty solid. He's been first pick the other 2 games anyway. So it's just that question of how much do you value him? You had mentioned it. Echrome's really solid here. And highlight the things that we can see Heimdall do. He does lots of good damage, gives you extra vision. He has good good clear. He's got good survivability. He's got good CC immunity built into the kit. I could probably keep listing things if I really wanted to go through all the little nuances that also exist there. He's just good in a lot of regards. And it feels like no matter what, if he's meta or not, he's always going to end up falling in this good enough category, right? Like even when he's not the strongest, he's good enough. Lock him in. And if you play him at a level like I think either of the 2 hunters in this matchup can, then he goes from good enough to, yeah, lock it in. I don't care if it's meta. You 2 are great at him. Do it. It's not like even a one-trick thing. You're just really good at Heimdall.
Yeah, I think that can be said for a lot of these EU hunters. I mean, we mentioned in the picks and bans last game where pretty much every EU hunter has a Heimdall in the pocket, whether it be like their number 1 pick, like Echrome, Spuddy on Vaporish Coast, like this would be like their go-to pick, or if it's something of, okay, well, it's up, we might as well just go ahead and take it here. In fact, it's seen so much more priority that Medusa was actually second picked after it, and then tiling that with a Yamoja. So we get a look at the dual lane for both these teams, Heimdall Ganesh versus Medusa Yamoja. Pressure kind of goes evenly amongst those two, I would imagine here, though, Gore.
Yeah, in terms of the duo lane, I think Medusi and Moja probably has like the first couple of levels a little bit more locked down overall, but that's just because Ganesh is a little slower to start. Heimdall's clear is decent, but again, a little slower to start than the Medusa. By the time they hit level 5, I think both of these lanes should be bouncing back and forth. Maybe a place where the jungle can show some presence. Which, again, maybe worries me a little bit. I think Game 1, good Chalk Jungle. Game 2, maybe not the best Chalk Jungle. So I think they're going back to it. Now that the Cthulhu's there, I'm a lot more ready to say that, yeah, it looks like this is going to be Chalk Jungle again. And so as long as Johnny gets off to the right start, then I think can be more impactful. Maybe it was the team around him that was less impactful, but it didn't feel like it did a whole lot there in Game 2.
Hera pickup here on the side of Hex Mambo. We don't get to see this god too often here. Some small buffs that have come her way over recent times. I believe she got a little bit of extra damage on Polymorph, if I'm not mistaken, and then Argus also got a little bit of extra protections thrown his way. So a couple of little buffs over towards this mid lane mage that have allowed her to kind of bump herself back up here. Maybe that's still not kind of one of those top pick mages, definitely reserved for the more niche style of players. When I think of the Heras of the world, I think of like Dardes, BMT over on the side of the Pro League.
Yeah.
Not too many in the SCC really come up to mind specifically on this pick, though.
But notably, 2 European mid laners that you just listed there.
True.
Right? So if you're adding another European mid laner to the list, all of a sudden I think we're starting to see the theme of Heimdall, maybe the theme of Hera.
Gods with
that
H's.
exists all in one place. It's only H gods. That's all they're allowed to do. I don't know why. It's a really weird contract they have.
I don't know where. Now we're really trying to connect the lines here on this theory billboard back here to figure things out. Hex Mambo, 6 Ferrymen, game number 3. Now ready to go. J-Mac, Gore, and Doug one more time here for our first set of the day. I don't know how we were able to draw those lines together. 3 European players, as far as a Hera would be concerned, as well as a bunch of Europeans playing Heimdall. Now we connect the H's out here. Maybe it's just going to, I don't know. Maybe we need a third H out here, then we can make a wrestling reference.
I'm trying to think of one. Horus? Nope. Horus doesn't work necessarily
well. Genetics.
Well, Genetics has a good Horus. But so does Wrong You, and Wrong You, last I checked, is not European.
No, definitely not.
So maybe it doesn't make the same connection as well. I think it is worth noting this is the first time that the Mambo are going to be first pick and on the order side of the map this set. So like a little bit of a change up there, not in like grand scheme, but at least in terms of getting their priority. I think it shows the value that puts on specifically Echrome having this Heimdall for it to be first pick overall, as well as just in general their draft, right? Being able to get the Ganesh, the Chalk early on, how well and how highly they value those. I think the Cthulhu looked really good for them in game number 1, so I expect high things from Deathwalker here. We'll see how the lanes end up going. Bellona and Kali. It's a lot of damage that can be thrown back in retaliation, but we'll see how well they can withstand the damage that's thrown their way early on.
It seems that no matter what game we get into, and no matter what lane combo that you throw to this Mambo team, they always seem to get this early pressure here for these first couple of levels. Echrome and Trix Tank on a slight advantage as far as the wave-to-wave goes, making sure that they keep that control here. A little bit slower pace this time. We're not seeing kills and major fights happening over into the solo lane. Instead, right now, we're just seeing Deathwalker walking to a back camp at this point here. But this kind of comes down to the one downside of this Hera's. Hera's got to get so close to that wave to get any kind of clear.
Yeah, it's going to be hurtful overall. Good news is that you've got a lot of self-peel, right? You've got a nice little shield, little knockback. You've got Argus to come in and save the day in certain circumstances. So if Ice, becomes a problem for Zeros, then that is a nice little safety maneuver. But like you said, you still have to put yourself out of position, and you need that survivability.
Oh no, stun is good. A leap in from Ice. One more auto, and that's going to give Ice the reset, but he's going to need all of that remaining health after to get away from Johnny. The slow from the rainstorm is good. The axe toss and one more auto makes it a 1-for-1 trade. But first blood goes to the Ferrymen.
And not only to the Ferrymen, it goes to the Kali in the game, right? That is not where you want anyone to get a small lead. Even if you're able to pull the kill back and specifically slow Ice down, should help alleviate the stress of a first blood bounty going over to the jungler. It's not going to, amass this massive lead early on, but it's still something you have to keep your eyes on. Kali's a ticking time bomb, and we've seen that timer move up, if anything. It has only been getting earlier in the game that we've started to see Kali's get to pop off. It just depends on the player. I think Ice plays the early game really well, and given the power that Kali can have behind it, could take a very late game scaling god make it look good early, and then really, really drive it home towards the end. Could be, the single win condition for the Ferrymen if they want. But they also have Thoth, who's been doing incredibly well as of late. I think even when paired with Kali, looks to do pretty well. And so this is a combination, I think, for the Ferrymen that I'm excited to see how they make it work together, because it just feels like it's going to be a powerful, powerful 2v2.
Yeah, I think I'm going to be keeping a lot of my eyes here into this mid lane with Ice Gunter up against the Johnny Zeros. The Hera already without beads for another 80 seconds means that Zeros doesn't have any immunities into the kit. There's no CC immunity on this Hera, just CC more than anything else, and a nice little health shield that oftentimes gets overlooked when you talk about a god like Hera.
Yeah.
The ability to drop a massive shield on yourself and grant yourself a little bit of extra movement speed is such a nice little tool that I think often does kind of get thought over here. You think of, oh, okay, Hera, you get a little bit of extra movement speed. You make Argus go super fast and get that AoE around him as well, but there's some safety towards Zero, but without beads, it does definitely make it a lot rougher for him in mid.
Yeah, I think it again is going to be less on Zeros, more on Relics and Ice's mood as to how well that mid lane can go. I think Ice has the power to force Zeros to be uncomfortable, constantly using Relics, constantly having to sit under the tower. And Ice can, spend time elsewhere, right? Like you said, I mean, Hera is going to have not necessarily trouble dealing with the Thoth, but you're going to be more or less in the same position they're in right now. Sitting in the tower line and waiting until he is done clearing, because you don't want to step up and eat all of the free poke he's going to get otherwise.
Yeah, definitely don't want to step up to a Thoth at really any point of the game unless I've got somebody else with me. So, I have my backup, my bodyguard, like, all right, Thoth, where's your dash? I hope you didn't already use it, or I hope you did use it, because then we can actually play out. At this point, I'm praying that he actually does end up using it here. Slight pause in the action. We'll be sure to get back into the game for you real quickly here. Deathwalker going back onto this Cthulhu over into the Soul Lane, had a strong performance in it game number 1, though I imagine with how little priority has been thrown by Ice towards the Soul Lane, probably going to be a lot less action happening over there for the early game.
Doesn't feel as high priority, I guess, like high risk for them, or I guess high reward, because last time around that's where they got a lot of their wins. I'd even highlighted it wasn't the first blood. It was the next kill. Deathwalker gets ganked and then kills Ice on that one. I think that slowed down and kind of stopped the jungle from the Ferrymen. They haven't had any plays like that in Game 2, and they so far haven't had any like that here in Game 3. And I don't expect it to happen, right? It's not easy to get early kills on a Cthulhu. So it was enticing when it happened, although the tower, maybe helping out a little bit. I just don't know that this is going to be the same kickoff for Deathwalker. Late game, you're still Cthulhu, and you still disrupt team fights, control the flow of things. If your ult is available, you become the most menacing thing that can exist on the map. And with the build he's going, he's going to have a little bit of power early on as well. And he's gone for the teleport, which I actually really like, having the upgrade. Just he uses it to get back to lane here. Maybe not a huge deal now, but in 5 minutes, 6 minutes, all of a sudden you're able to out-rotate this Bologna and keep pace, where otherwise you would have been kind of slowed down and maybe having troubles getting to the back line.
Now, Ice was the one who got first blood here in this game for the Ferrymen, first blood in general on the map. But it's Johnny who's taking an experience lead here. I mean, that kill returning right back out meant that Ice lost a little bit of early farm, though. I mean, levels are very low at this point, so your respawn timers in accordance will also be low. Dharmic Pillars there by Trix Tank, zoning away, and an Argus. So a lot thrown out here into the mid lane by the side of Hex Mambo, and I'm not exactly sure what they're throwing this all out there for.
I mean, a little bit of safety, yeah. Otherwise, I guess clear a little bit quicker. I think it is to kind of thwart the Ferrymen from getting aggressive. Unfortunately, they're not going to be able to do that in every lane.
No, Deathwalker used the ultimate and then got even more aggressive. Does have the dash, but the dash isn't going to get Deathwalker very far. That'll be a kill. Going over to Ice to put a second one up now for the Styx Ferrymen, and to start pulling back some of that XP deficit that he had there into the jungle. XP still 1,500 up, though, for Hex Mambo, but gold, a different story. Completely even here 7 minutes in.
There's a world, you roll back to like EU versus NA when we have like complete, I guess we still have that. It's just now an SEC. Johnny and Ice would have been just like and is a very fun jungle matchup to watch. And they've always been fun to watch up against like the other SBL junglers, things like that. And so this one's been, again, just kind of a nice highlight into what both of them can bring. And really, not necessarily, I don't want to say like ride or die for the team, But like, Ice gets hands-on, and it's just so different for the Ferrymen, I think, all around in terms of gameplay. All of a sudden, everybody's getting to kind of benefit from it. And like you said, there's like small jungle changes or maybe experience changes. Ice might not be fully ahead of Johnny, but you're keeping up just fine, and you're getting a little bit more for your lanes. And so it's a little worthwhile. You lose out on that 1 or 2 camps, and all of a sudden, everybody gets to benefit from it.
I want to talk about farm game. I do want to highlight Trixtank here. It's not very often that we get to see a support hit level 20 in really any games. I remember in game number 1, he'd hit it by like 24 minutes in, which is unheard of for a support to be level 20 by that point. It's usually like 30, 35 minutes if we're even getting that far in the game. So I just want to give a little shout there to Trixtank for the amount of farm he's been able to find on any of these picks that he's grabbing.
He's got like a level and a half now, right? Like you can call it 2 levels just because it's a 2-level separation, but you should, and I expect to see Okeanos get up soon. And it depends on whether or not they can isolate and lock down this Emoja.
It's going to be a good polymorph onto the Emoja. Argus drops down, and so does the ultimate from Johnny. And that will be the kill onto Okeanos. A nice pick for Hex Mambo, though. It cost them a lot to do so, and it might cost them their solo laner's life. Deathwalker running as fast as he can go. The knockup is good to slow down Ice, and Trixtank is here. And that will buy Deathwalker just enough room and just enough time to make it out.
I'm surprised it was just Trixtank that was there. I guess Johnny was like making his way over here anyway, but it was surprising, I think, that it could have maybe evolved into another kill for the Mambo. And I only say maybe because I don't know how well they would have locked down the Kali even if they had everyone there. So you get a little bit more farm, you stop Deathwalker from dying. That's a huge deal for you early on, especially after last death. And it balances things out. Deathwalker in solo lane late game, you're still going to have a lot of the same items. I expect that he's still going to be tanky, still going to have a very powerful presence on this Cthulhu. And so the window for Kali, outside of having this Cthulhu as their target to try and chase down Deathwalker and kill him off, it's disappearing. The ease of access that you have to a kill in the right-hand lane for the Ferrymen is going to just fall apart. And now you have to start looking elsewhere. Granted, like we had mentioned earlier, can be easy to kill off a Hera, although health shield, move speed, Argus, polymorph. She's got a lot going on that can keep her going just fine. And then you've got a Heimdall on the other side of the map. Yeah, it's not a lot of easy targets for the Ferrymen once they lose those capabilities of just taking down the Cthulhu. So Zeros might be the easiest, but we might start entering this period mid-game where Ice just can't get as much done.
I'm wondering if anybody on Hex Mambo is going to pick up some anti-attack speed. Something like a Witchblade, a Midgardian Mail. Just because when you look over at the opposite side, Streak Up, obviously, Hunter, going to have some natural attack speed thrown in there. Ice, Kali, a lot of attack speed is going to be built into the kit. And a Bellona with Berserker's Shield and Shogun's Kasari. And I can only imagine maybe a Frenzy from Okeanos later. Somebody's going to need to be slowing down that attack speed. Who's it going to be? Not Zeros right now. His health bar is in nowhere. I was going to say it's in the red, but no, it is just gone. As is he. 30 seconds on the respawn from a big snipe at a Gunter.
Yeah, well, and also his health bar is blue because he's on the order side of the map.
Right,
the red health bars are the other.
Right, but when you look on the left side, it turns red as it gets low. So that's where I was going on that one.
It just depends on where you're looking.
Yeah. Which side of the, are you looking in the middle of your screen? Are you looking over to the left side? Are you looking down at your health bar? Who knows?
Unfortunately, again, I think that showcases where the pressure for the Ferrymen exists now. Can you kill Cthulhu? Probably with a heavy dive. Is it worth it? That one's going to be a little shakier of an option. Can you kill Hera? Yeah. Can you do it multiple times? Oh, yeah. Can it open up opportunities for you on the map? Well, apparently so. Pyromancer gets to go their way. And I think you're starting to see what the presence of this Kali and what this Thoth damage is going to be able to do as the game goes on. It feels like this 2v2, Ice and Gunter were a really big deal last time. In fact, they end up eating a lot of those bans, the Nemesis and then eventually the Persephone gets banned out from game 2 to game 3.
Oh, no, Streak Up.
Yeah, Streak Up needs to live here.
No, beads are up, but there's no need to use the beads. Damage is already too much for this Medusa to deal with here. 3-man rotation out of Hex Mambo. We'll get a pick on the Hunter, and that comes down from Petrify, was used earlier just to try and secure the purple buff, but was a little bit too early, didn't end up getting that one. So now all that safety and all that CC that Streak Up could have had was already gone.
Yeah, I think it's slowly changing up the pace of things, right? You look at it, I think the deficit for Deathwalker maybe doesn't mean that much. If anything, it doesn't mean anything between these two in lane. It means something when Azriel's in the fight. Just having that level 13 means it's a lot more pressure onto the mid laner, a little more pressure onto Echrome there. That's the only big game changer, I think, over the right-hand lane. But then you've got 2 levels for Johnny. That feels really good for your Chalk to get a lead. 1 level deficit, Gunter's going to have an advantage there. Johnny might lose that 2-level lead here.
Good ultimate from Johnny will buy away from the Eagles rally that Azriel thrown out. And it's level 14 for Johnny here. Tied for highest level on the map up against Thoth and then with his partner Echrome here on the opposite side of the map. Ice will steal away an offering camp. Not quite enough to stack up that obelisk. Deathwalker will take a nice little stroll around the Fire Giant to get back towards this solo lane. But looking down the build so far, I mean, Johnny's going, seems to be the same route that he was going in last game. Jotun's Wrath into the Transcendence. Then we see one of the shields picked up after that. This Pridwin has made its way into the build for these supports more often than not in this set. I mean, we've been seeing a little bit less of Pridwin as of late, but every one of these games, these supports are really starting to like this item. Yeah,
survivability is just really nice. Getting a shield when you throw out your ult, especially for how quickly we were watching specifically Okeanos in game 1, but then Trixtank in game 2, how often they were dying, it just felt really solid. So I think it's one of those items that, again, is it like the highest priority for everybody? No, but does it still work really well? Yes. And so it's going to feel comfortable here. I think Trixtank as well with the way that he's playing. It's going to end up benefiting him because Ganesh likes to be in your face, kind of has to be because of the range of the abilities. But we haven't seen as many skirmishes over the last few minutes after these have been picked up. Maybe they're slowing things down for them, and that's why you don't want to fight it. What's the point of going in onto Okeanos if he can just ult and burn it? Outside of the fact that his ult's 140 seconds.
A long time.
Instead go for Gold Fury.
Timmy Argus dropped here by the mid laner, polymorphing a bunch of damage right afterwards. This Gold Fury is going down quick, but not quick enough. It's going to have to be leashed because the Ferrymen support have shown up. But Okeanos is losing out on their life. Half health now. The Dharmic Pillars to slow them out. The Riptide will make sure that Okeanos does have a path to get out. And we saw Final Judgment being charged up by Gunter. It hasn't been fired just yet. The Root will find Deathwalker. That's going to get descent into madness, but that's not going to be enough. That extra HP is nowhere near enough to keep Deathwalker alive. Gunner finds the snipe, and Trixtank should go down here as 3 are chasing out this elephant. The bludgeon will be silenced out, but the stun from Ice is good, and the tower dive is enough.
Yeah, that once the stun came through, that's all you're waiting for is, all right, Ice, get into range, get into range, get into range. And the minute it hits, yeah, that's a guaranteed death. Good from Trixtank, silencing out the bludgeon from Azriel, at least slows down what was going to be an otherwise easy kill for the Ferryman, forces them to fall back, or not even fall back, aggress a little further forward. Does not end up making them bite off more than they can chew, though, right? They get a couple of kills, they get both the frontliners. Deathwalker died quickly in that engagement, and by the time you had called it, when Descent into Madness comes through, didn't make that big of a difference. Gunter has the best secure in the game, and granted that Final Judgment was used to get a kill, but either way, it's just going to be hard for them to try and fight up against and feel confident in. A lot of relics get used on the side of the Mambo, specifically 2 beads, 1 on Zeros, 1 on Johnny. And even though Johnny's 3 and 0, has all of the kills for the Hex Mambo, it feels like during the team fight, we're not getting to see as much out of Johnny and Deathwalker so far in Game 3 as we got to in Game 1 when they were on the same picks.
I mean, if we look at Deathwalker's build, going into that last fight, he didn't have this Tier 2 Wardstone, only had the Tier 1 of it.
It was a lot squishier.
So he didn't have any real magical protection to go up against Gunter, and what happened? Gunter just abused him. He rooted him out, hit him with a few hieroglyphic shots, and then by the time Deathwalker is even able to get up into the ultimate, the Final Judgment was already there. Deathwalker needs a little bit of extra magical protection to help before he can really deal with Gunter here in these midst of these team fights. As far as the XP is concerned, I mean, with this, the closest game that we have had at 16.5 minutes in, with barely 2,500-ish gold separating them, and make it a little bit spicier here. Zeros is nowhere to go. River's Rebuke. Plus just the damage out of Gunter, just that raw damage that this Thoth can bring. Puts another one up for the Ferrymen.
And here's the big deal to me out of that. First off, they also get Deathwalker's ult. I mean, that's huge to be able to pull that along with the Dharmic Pillars. That Frostbound Hammer putting in work for Azriel. What I see out of all of that, yes, it's beads and blink used for the Kali, but Ice hasn't had to use their ult. And that's so massive as a Kali. I mean, that just feels like, not only does that showcase that you're getting away with a lot when you get kills like that, but now you just have more opportunity. Just blanket statement, better opportunities to get aggressive and find a fight that is going to work out for you. Chase someone down under a tower without having to worry about your death, things like that. And so I'm going to continue watching this Kali. Again, something that can get hands-on early on, and did because Ice plays it well. And now I think can grow into a really, really power pick for them. And where are the leads right now? If you're looking at them, you've got the level lead, for Johnny. Maybe feels good in terms of experience, but from what Johnny's putting out on the map right now over the last few minutes versus what Ice is, yeah, I'm going the Kali all the way, and it's only half a level anyway, so who cares? And then you look down, the only other lead that they have, Hex Mambo, E-Chrome, 1 level up on Streak Up. In a 1v1, matters a lot. In a team fight, I like what Streak Up's bringing so far, and with the way the rest of this is going, I think Streak Up's going to be able to meld into the Ferrymen a little bit better. But E-Chrome's always going to be a win condition, and I think the damage that E-Chrome can put out, specifically onto the Kali, as you just saw, that's going to be where they can try to turn this game right back into their favor.
I'm waiting for E-Chrome to finally get really involved in one of these big team fights. Everything's been happening kind of around this Heimdall more often than not. The only real action that we've seen from him was whenever they were fighting against Streak Up over on that left side under that tier 1 tower. But now E-Chrome level 18 does have mostly just attack speed and pen going here, kind of foregoing this crit build. We've been noticing kind of a changing trend in the Hunters where crit's not as valuable in one build, and then you get players like Zapman and them who are going this more crit-oriented build, and it kind of changes it up. So we're finally starting to see some change-ups as far as the Hunter builds are concerned as a whole.
Yeah, you're getting like an equal balance of, okay, what do we, like, what's our priority here? Are we trying to shred tanks and objectives, or are we trying to kill fast, right? Crit is going to help you out if you think you're going to get your hands on the backline pretty quickly, or if you're worried about the jungle here. And, I honestly, like with a Kali, sometimes crit is like your best friend because all of a sudden they're chunked down, but they have death immunity. So maybe it's not the best overall. But then you look at who's going to be diving you, what kind of damage you're going to be doing. I think for both carries, trying to burn through the health bar of a Chalk, of a Cthulhu, and of Trix Tank here on the Ganesh. Yeah, it makes sense to try and go for an HP-based build, or damage-based build on the side of Streak Up.
Johnny gets a lot of damage on a Gunter. Maybe not as much as he was hoping, though, but that comes down to all of the healing that Okeanos has thrown the way over towards mid. Gunter, who was under half HP, now brought back to about 80%, thanks to all the heals that Okeanos has thrown out there. Look at how much CDR Okeanos has in that build. No wonder those Omi are coming back so fast. 20% from Pridwin, the 10% you get from Shogun's Kasari. Good lord, he's got Omi for days.
Yeah, and man, let me tell you, nothing feels better on Yamoja than having enough that, like, it's not so fast that it's, resurging. Like, you can watch the mana bar over there. I guess it's the Omi bar because it's the Yamoja, but, like, it's not filling up insanely quick. But that's like 5 heals that you're going to be able to throw off and get off more in the middle of a fight.
Johnny needs one more big hit, and Gunter will find it with the Hieroglyphic Assault to take that one down. Jungler gone for the side of Hex Mambo. That sets up for the Oni Fury now, for the Styx Ferrymen. The Styx Ferrymen out here want the Fury. Oni down to about 5%, but Hex Mambo steal it away between Zeros and Trix Tank. They're able to find a gap to the back line, but it's not even them. It's gonna be this Heimdall that steals it away, but how much have they lost in the midst of this fight? It's everybody. Everyone is gone. Was the Fury worth it? I'd say no.
Yeah, in fact, they're still up in gold. The only thing they stopped is the Ferrymen are no longer as far in gold. But you know what you do lose, J-Mac? You definitely lose the Fire Giant. So you managed to pull something back in your favor. I don't know. It feels very disjointed from Hex Mambo from top to bottom. The other side, that's where I want to highlight it. I think Gunter has good damage early on, immediately able to help find, as you highlighted, the last hit onto Johnny, and good damage out there. 6-0-2 for this Thoth, and is only second to the Bologna, who has been boxing up against a Cthulhu this game. Yeah, you're getting a lot of effective damage out of your mid laner, and that's just paying dividends for everybody afterward. I mean, it's making it easier for Streak Up to come in. 1-1 and 3 doesn't look glamorous down there, and when you look at again, like player damage and things like that, it's not going to be insane from the Medusa, but it's bringing exactly what they need. Number 4 on the charts, and again, just a couple hundred ahead of where E-Chrome is. Feels good for what Streak Up can bring, along with that ult, and then how well that damage also from the mid lane, from your carry, enables a Kali who has 9 out of 11 affected kills, has only died once. And from what I can see, i-Sice is getting away with murder because they have not needed to use either their beads in that last fight nor their ult in a lot of these engagements. And so they don't have the answer for this Kali just yet. And that's not great when you're going into the 20-minute mark. You need way more to try and shut this down later on. And so i-Sice is having a whale of a time on this pick.
You need more than one answer. You need like multiple. Like you're looking at A, B, C, and D, and you need to make sure that you can hit the secret answer E, all of the above, to try and stop this Kali. But i-Sice has pretty much gone undeterred for the majority of this game here. Did end up finishing that Odysseus bow right after a hastened katana. So i-Sice really going to stick to a lot of these targets out here. Azrael, same thing, going to stick to a lot of targets thanks to the Frostbound that was highlighted just earlier on for us. And then a Spirit Robe, kind of as a fourth item here. We've been seeing a little bit more of this item as of recent. It seems that a lot of players are favoring this extra, the CC reduction that you're getting from this item.
Yeah, CCR, look, CCR is a great stat. I think, like, again, when it comes down to things like that, it feels really good, especially in moments like this.
Deathwalker up descent to the madness, but he doesn't have very many places to go. Echrome finds ult to the background, but it's Azrael up against 4, finds a triple Eagles rally right on top of the backline. i-Sice dives in, pops that destruction, but doesn't manage to find any damage immediately afterward. i-Sice is low, and Johnny will finally put him down. A turnaround kill for Hex Mambo means the tier 2 tower does not go down.
I mean, they finally get something, and they've burned a lot of relics on the other side. Echrome's low, and you know, you have to play this safe as a carry. Well, Zero's finally getting some good damage on the board, and specifically Johnny getting to show back up in the fight. That's a huge Fire Giant buff to strip away, and more importantly, a big kill with a lot of utility taken off of the Kali. 30 seconds when i-Sice comes back. No beads, no ult. It's going to still be a fight that is worrisome for just i-Sice. Everybody else seems to be more than happy on the Ferrymen. And so I think we're getting to see a glimpse of what Mambo can do, and Hex Mambo have a lot more of that potential. They got to make it happen, or else this game's going to fall through their hands.
Mambo are charging forward as Pyromancer started by Ferrymen with Johnny and Echrome right behind. Ferrymen are not going to commit to going for the objectives, but it's not with i-Sice here. So Pyromancer now should go the way of Hex Mambo, unless Azrael can steal this one away. It'll be leashed back over to the Ferrymen, and they do manage to steal that one out. Hex Mambo had that Pyromancer the whole way through, but once again, another objective stolen away in this game. This time for the Ferrymen.
And control like that, yeah, you don't like it when you start to see over 10K numbers in the charts, right? So you're really feeling uncomfortable around everything. I mean, Primal Fury is going to be coming up. Do you think you can pressure that out if you're Hex Mambo? They've got better secure on the other side, and just enough cooldown that in the middle of a team fight, you can throw out the ult from Gunter and not stress too much about having it for the next Fire Giant fight if they go for the Primal really quickly. The good news is, for Hex Mambo, they didn't lose a Phoenix. They managed to burn out the last minute of the FG power play. And now they're in this, I want to say weird in-between, right? A lot of vision from the Ferrymen on the side of Hex Mambo's map, and they're going to spot you through the jungle a majority of the way. They've got more damage from you, better range than you, but we've seen where they can bleed. It's a can you kill off i-Sice. Ult back up. 30 seconds until the beads are there, though, and that's going to be, I think, an opening opportunity for Hex Mambo. Getting aggressive, making i-Sice fall down early, and at this point, probably try to kill Gunter, although that's much easier said than done. Thoth free firing from the backline so far is going to be a pretty heavy and high priority target. But I think if you can get rid of the Kali, that kicks off where your strength and engagement is going to be. And then you can start talking about FG fights. I don't think they have to abandon this. Last game, there was no way they should have stepped up to an FG, and they didn't. This game, you can at least bear to be around it. You do still need to be careful, and I don't think you get to be the aggressor. You have to be playing this as the response team.
We want to talk about gods that are like a gas pedal. We always talk about Kali. And now, throw in something like, well, yeah, Hasten Katana means that as long as Kali's still hitting basics, they'll never leave you. And then you throw the Hasten Wings right after with that Okeanos has picked up for the second relic over here. Now, even if you thought you could get outpace i-Sice somehow being able to outrun them, well, now there's an extra little bit of movement speed and a little bit of extra boost over towards this Kali to make sure they can really stick to you.
Yeah, it's going to be difficult just to survive an onslaught from i-Sice. Luckily, they don't seem to have that worry right now. They're going elsewhere. Ice is going to come into the backline.
Dharmic Pillars were used very early in the fight. Streak Up will dash their way on out. And in the backline is Ice. Finds Stun up against Ecron, but it's an ult traded out for Ecron to find their way out of this one. Bifrost will find the distance. Ice uses that destruction, but it's just to retreat as their health bar is falling dangerously low. Some heals from Okeanos will make sure to keep Ice alive in the fight. A lot of blood spilled, or at least a lot of abilities thrown, but no deaths just yet.
5 relics burned on each side. You get 2 from the support. Both of the carries are missing their beads and Aegis now. And it's on equal cooldown for Streak Up. Needed to get out of there, needed to stay alive, does so. But again, it makes things a lot more difficult. It's going to take a long time before they get back. But the 2 relics being burned for Ice, not having that blink anymore, not having the beads anymore, makes it a lot more easy to lock down, control this Kali, who I think had a really, really good jump into the back line. But now you're in a different scenario. Also, was that a heroic teleport? I don't think we've gotten to see a heroic teleport. So, I mean, move speed, you get prots as well. It gets you into the back line and you get to be tanky, but not something that comes up too often from what we've seen this year.
No, I think we saw like maybe one? I think one in the SPL last week we got to see, but
oh, that doesn't count. I wasn't here.
That's you know what, you weren't here.
All games last week are imaginary.
Yeah, those are fictional games out here, Gore. We actually wrote a new script for those ones, so that way you can actually take a look at those.
So I can go off mine.
Yeah, that way you can have your own little script to go here. Ice up against Johnny is a relatively even coin battle until the rest of the Ferrymen show up, and now Johnny doesn't have the coin to help him out here. It's now weighted to the Ferrymen. Instead, it's all of Hex Mambo on the run. Argus dropped into the back line, but quickly used to retreat. Okeanos finds a Retribute that locks in Deathwalker to send to the Madness to get him a lot of extra HP and a lot of AoE damage to throw out. Dharmic Pillars in response by Hex Mambo. Now it's the Ferrymen on the run. Azriel to the far left side of the fight. But now with Deathwalker at half HP, Ice going back in. Deathwalker will manage to find a dash out, but Strixtank gets caught out.
Yeah, now again with 2 big kills off of the board, no Fire Giant. This is where things get awkward. You're just low enough that you could probably aggress. You've got a minion wave. You should be able to get this Phoenix, but maybe not end yet.
Well, teleport from Azrael will get him right back into the fight.
Died.
And as soon as a minion walked in, the Phoenix goes down to the Styx Ferryman. Mid Phoenix down, and now with the Fire Giant up, and everybody fairly healthy thanks to the help of this Umoja, Styx Ferryman should be able to take this objective unless somebody from Hex Mambo can find their way in to sneak that out.
I don't think... Oh, I guess they're getting aggressive. I don't know if this is where you want to be, though. I think this is a bad position for your carries to be leading the way. One misstep from Zeros, and all of a sudden you're dead.
That's a jump in from Ice. The stun stops the Polymorph. Polymorph still goes through. Ice will pop the beads, the alternate timeline, and the Aegis will buy Zeros only another moment before Gunter puts him down 8-0 on the Thoth. And where has Azriel been the whole time? Bullying Echrome from one side of the map to the other. The Bifrost will get Echrome some distance. The Atu will get him some lifesteal, but that's not enough to stop this Bologna.
Yeah, that just hurts. And now Trixting stunned out. I mean, this is good fights from the Ferrymen.
Ferrymen only have 2 people left standing between them and the Titan, and I'm not sure that those 2 are going to be mountainous enough. Deathwalker, no ult available to himself for a few more seconds. Johnny does have ult, but it's 5 versus 2. Ice swinging away at this Titan, and that ult is gone. Not a chance for Hex Mambo to defend, and the Styx Ferrymen reverse sweep Hex Mambo.
And I think they do it really well. Hex Mambo, again, early lead in game number 1 for Hex Mambo leads to just a victory, right? They just kind of stumble their way forward. A lot of really clean play from them in game number 1 with maybe one small misstep towards the end that didn't even affect anything. Game 2, it's pretty much the exact same thing, but in reverse for the Ferrymen. This game, it was a lot more back and forth. You could see where there were moments of levity, I want to say, for the Ferrymen. But the Kali was doing a lot early on, and I can't wait to see the Thoth's damage numbers at the very end of it because he was free-firing. I don't think died once throughout that game, getting a lot of damage out there as well. It made it so difficult for anybody to aggress. And then that last fight was just the carries. They got aggressive. They were like, maybe we can stop a Fire Giant. The answer was no, they can't, and also they died for it.
Yeah, that did not go so well there for the side of Hex Mambo at the end of that one. I'm interested to see Azriel and Gunter's damage numbers. We're going to see that right after this break. Well, the Styx Ferrymen are finally able to find their first win here in the SCC by getting a victory now over Hex Mambo. So both of these teams now dropping, or one rising to a 1-2 record, the other one now dropping into a 1-2 record. That one at least being Hex Mambo here. But Styx Ferrymen, game number 1, it was very rough for them. Game number 2, pretty dominant performance. But like we were saying here, Gormizer, in game number 3, the first 15, 16 minutes, real close-knit, basically 1,000 gold in experience kind of separating these teams. And then that's when we finally see the Ferrymen able to break themselves out.
Yeah, I think that it's, little moments that are going back and forth between both of these teams. You get to see the Kali kind of stepping up, finding some kills. You get to see Johnny then step up and find some kills. You get to see some damage coming out from Streak Up, and then Echrome balances it out. Really, I think the changing point overall for them, not only was it a little bit later in the game, but was, these moments where Kali is able to chase down specifically like zeros, get the carries like it's nothing. I mean, like no resistance, no damage taken to Ice there, and they just knock down 2 people like it's nothing. They get a huge deicide on that fight as well, and Gunter doesn't die. Gunter deals so much damage, and Gunter just then was standing at the front of the fight, was leading the way, but with the roots, with the CC, with the ults, and specifically the hieroglyphic assault, it just burned through everybody. And then there were moments, unfortunately for them, we caught it in, well, I don't know if I want to say caught it in 4K, but we kind of caught it in 4K, which is that, the carries stepped up to an FG fight. Echrome tried to run away, and Azriel said no and chased him down. That's the only kill Azriel got all game, and he did it the old-fashioned way. I mean, just a good beatdown, good relic usage as well to make sure things continue going their way. The other side of that, while that was going on, Zeros got caught out by Ice another time, and again, it opened it up. And then you have, Chalk and Cthulhu Ganesh to defend? Yeah, they'll live a little longer, but damage-wise and turnaround potential-wise, that's not incredibly high. So it became a much easier fight from that point forward.
22.7K out of Azriel. Nice. Feels good.
Yeah.
27,000 out of Gunter.
Feels better.
Feels even better and doesn't feel as good for the enemy team. No one able to get to that 20K mark. Deathwalker, the closest one there. And I always kind of look in games like this when we see a god go undying. I always kind of wonder myself, it's like, okay, how much damage did they really take to the game? Were they really under fire? Gunter was. 14,000 is nothing to scoff at as far as damage thrown towards a Thoth. But the fact that he took that much damage and still lived the entire game without dying through and still put out 27,000 damage, I mean, that is insane.
Yeah, I think that was just not enough dive is the only way to describe it. I think that Mambo had some interesting things. The Chalk is the one that lost me. I think in game 1, it gets ahead and it looks good, but it felt very, I guess, Erlong Shin-esque, right? You're ahead, you look great. Man, nothing bad to say about this pick. You fall behind, where were they? What did you do? And I think in that one, we got to see what Johnny could do. He was ahead for a majority of it, but as the game shifted on, there was a lot less of a presence from the Chalk than there was from the Kali. In game 2, there was virtually no presence from the Chalk versus the Nemesis. So I think that it's just something that I like that they brought it and they kept bringing it, but maybe that's something that needs to change in the future going into game 3s.
Maybe so here. Styx Ferrymen, though, they do find their first win of the phase, and that finds them their first win today here for our sets. We still have one more EU set to go right after this one. That'll be the Niflheim Wargs and the Gilded Gladiators squaring off. And then after that, we'll have a couple of NA sets to go through here for our 4 sets of our SCC action. But a big win out of the Ferrymen, needing to get that first kind of win out there. You never want to be one of the teams that sits down at the 0 and X threshold for much longer. You want to try and find your way into at least finding that 1 out there, because then it becomes a lot more contentious in that middle of the pack. You know, that top 4 is typically that point where all these teams are going to be wanting to shoot for.
And honestly, I think it creates a very interesting thing. You had mentioned it earlier, but this next one's like a fight for first. But then look at all of the teams that could potentially be right next to each other. I mean, if the Scorpions are able to beat off the Ravens tomorrow, then all of a sudden we've got 4 teams that are 1 and 2, right? At the very bottom. And theoretically you'll have then one team at 2-1, one team at 3-0. So maybe like the top is maybe getting a little further away, but it does make it a lot more interesting in Europe that the bottom 4 are pretty much all right next to each other.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, that Ravens matchup will happen later on during the week.
Yeah,
there, that'll be our tomorrow matchup to start things out for the SCC. But as our first one goes through, we already get our first 3-game set of the day going the way of the Styx Ferrymen. It's a pretty good one, though.
Yeah, I'm excited to watch this. I think that the Hex Mambo not dominating Europe is actually a huge deal to me. Like, this team is, like you had mentioned it earlier, you've got 4 guys that have SPL experience, a few of them that have been in World Championships quite a few times. Trickstank, again, one of like the biggest star players for years in the SPL. So seeing them not dominate in Europe is a very interesting dynamic shift, and I think it goes to show like Ferrymen have a lot of tenure as well. And it's just exciting to see how these matches keep going.
Yeah, I love how close all of these teams are here for these 2 regions out here, especially Europe. I mean, you never know who's going to be coming out on top here. But we are going to take a quick break. Whenever we come back, we have our second set of the day, so stick around. We'll be back for that in just a few minutes.